was told by our executive director I had to read the statement. Time is, this is February 13, 2013. It's time 1:04 p.m. This regular scheduled meeting of the Board of Architecture and Engineering Examiners is taking place in the third floor conference room of the Andrew Jackson Tower, 710 James Robinson Parkway, Nashville, Tennessee, and the notice of this board meeting was posted in the board website on February the 5th, 2013. All right. Well, let's, can we have a roll call?
Susan Ballard. Here. Al Balthrop.
Here.
Wilson Borden.
Here.
Robert Campbell.
Here.
Drum Headley.
Here.
Philip Lim.
Yeah.
Bill Lockwood.
Here.
Rick Thompson.
Here.
Frank Waxter.
Here.
Vicky Versailles.
Here.
Alton Petco.
Happy Valentine's Day Eve here.
I thought he was going to say Happy Gilmore.
He was on last night.
Stephen King.
Here.
We have four.
Thank you, madam.
We have 100%.
Thank you. Oh, man, that's good. You guys must be ready to go to work. Do we have any guests in there? Hello, Candy. Welcome. We'll talk to you soon. Anything else? Anybody else? No. Okay.
Does everybody have an iPad?
I'm sharing with Susan. That's
Okay.
right. No, hey, I can't. We're operated anyway, so
Okay. Since we had an extra one, so I was going to, okay.
I'm an extraneous person.
I think you need to make him a book. That's what I say. Announcement. Do we have an announcement? I think everybody's been introduced. Okay. If you have, before you is the agenda for this afternoon meeting, if you get a chance to review it, any changes, any addition that you want to request for the board to consider? Okay, hearing none, let's go on to our consent agenda. Before you was emailed to you all, and also in your package is the minutes of the 2012 board meeting. I need to hear a motion.
I will move that we approve as written, unless there's any other changes to them from anybody.
I have a motion to approve the 2012 December meeting. Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Good. All right. John, next staff complaint.
Yes, it's on page 24 of 166 on your iPads. 24 of 166. These are complaints in which the respondent was disciplined. In another jurisdiction, the discipline was less than a suspension or revocation, so in accordance with board policy, we issued a letter of caution and recommend closure.
Okay. Do we have a motion to?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motions. Any discussion? Having none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any? Okay. Thank you. All right, let's move on to the next one. I'm trying to get used to this iPad. Professional society. I know Kenny's here. Kenny, you want to come forward and?
Thank you. I'm Candy Toller, representing the Tennessee Society of Professional Engineers and the American Council of Engineering Companies of Tennessee. And I'm here today for one thing, to talk to you about legislation. There are several issues that I feel pretty sure that you will want to weigh in on. The first one is something coming out of Memphis, and it's coming from the home builders, and it would allow exempt jurisdictions to adopt pretty much whatever code they wanted to, and it did not have to be as stringent as the code adopted by the state.
Is that not against, like, the Constitution or something? I mean, no, I mean, I'm being serious. From what I understand, a lower subdivision can adopt more stringent, but they can't adopt.
It changes that language.
But I mean, that's never been the precedent, has it, anywhere? I mean, nationally, internationally. I mean, just.
Correct.
That's
The
what
home
I-
builders want to change it. And just on its face, it doesn't seem like that's the thing to do.
Have they offered specifics of why they feel like it is too limiting in their jurisdiction,
Well,
the current code?
it's a seismic issue in Memphis,
Okay.
and they want local government to be able to adapt to local conditions. Now, it doesn't make sense to me that they would want to have a less stringent code in Memphis where we've got seismic issues to begin with. And Ricky might be able to say more about that, or Philip.
Yeah.
And the county commission discussed it at length in the summer, I believe.
Okay. It's not a new issue for Shelby County that developers are pushing to make the seismic design criteria less stringent. Memphis is in a pretty heavy seismic region close to the New Madrid Fault, so there's definitely that push by the developers.
I bet the Structural Engineers Association of Tennessee would be interested in that too.
Well, they definitely are. They are rabid about it.
Okay.
So I would hope that you guys would go on record as opposing House Bill 92.
Is that, 92 and Senate Bill 281?
Yes. And
on
John asked me for my list of legislation.
Right.
So
Okay.
he sent it to you.
It's on my pending legislation list.
Right.
So y'all can take positions on legislation.
Yeah, we can, yeah. Later, we can give you our opposition with a position statement. That's like we normally would do.
Okay. On a little bit brighter note, Jim Tracy and Harry Brooks have introduced legislation to award STEM stipends. Now, this is going to be more for the engineers than the architects, but people who are in universities in an engineering program or math, science, technology, engineering, math, could get an additional $1,000 if this bill were passed, an additional stipend in addition to the Hope Scholarship. There's one other code bill that's really not as significant. I mean, it pretty much, and I don't know if I gave it to you, John, it is House Bill 876, and it takes out from under the fire marshal's jurisdiction all buildings under 5,000 square feet and 3 stories, no matter what the occupancy, in exempt jurisdictions. It's less bad than 92. Population in excess of 300,000. Did I give you that one?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
on my list.
It's on his list. And those are the bills that you're most likely interested in hearing about. What else did I tell them about?
You have a question? Candace, we got a question here.
Okay.
Does this apply to occupancies like assisted livings that may be under 5,000 square feet?
It could. But the exempt jurisdiction still has to do the inspections.
Right.
It's just the state fire marshal that doesn't need to come in and do the
You
inspection.
don't go through a state farm.
Oh, no, you've got to have them with assisted livings, so I disagree with that completely.
Okay.
We can make
I
opposition.
would too, because it opens that's a potential can of worms.
And I can give you an example. In Knoxville, there was a young designer, and I mean young as in just out of school, was told by the consultant to the assisted living center to camouflage the fire exit so the Alzheimer's patients wouldn't try to get out. And when she told me that, I about blew a gasket. So I would strongly, suggest that we not allow that.
What is the category of assisted living centers?
It's a residency.
Okay.
And see, they can be, 5,000 square feet, 2 stories, because people are turning everything into an assisted living, to make some money.
So is it like multi-family or?
No, it's
This
just,
just pertains to business occupancy.
assembly,
No, it's not as, I don't think it's assembly. Let me look it up now.
John's going through the 150 pages to.
Yeah, it looks like the exemptions apply to B, F, H, R, and M, or S occupancy, so that leaves out assembly
Okay.
and E, education, and it seems like there's maybe another couple that are not exempted right now.
So the question is whether nursing homes are,
Well, it's, to me, anywhere that you're going to have someone sleeping, they should not fall under, this recommendation, but, I think the fire marshal needs to be there. That's my opinion, so.
Yeah, that's what it,
But you're saying an exempt county or jurisdiction. So
we'll do the
the
inspection.
requirements are still the same.
Mm-hmm.
Whether
Yes.
it's done by the locals or the state fire marshal.
Yes.
Is the state fire marshal, what's their position?
They haven't, well,
I mean, that sounds like less work for them.
Well,
off the record, I had a conversation, and they haven't taken a position.
we'll see also licensing of that type of facility falls under
Joint Commission.
Health Department.
Yeah, and, yes, Joint Commission and Health Department. So, they need to have, we can't do that. This is not safe. So,
maybe I'm not understanding what I'm reading on this very short synopsis, but it says is only if the state fire marshal has approved the local jurisdiction to do this.
That's what makes them exempt jurisdictions.
So the state fire marshal would have less to do because he has shifted the burden of doing that to the local inspector. So that they would still get an inspection.
Correct.
okay.
But who author, besides the authors and the legislature,
House bill.
who started this?
Who's behind that one?
Yeah.
Hamilton County.
And their reasoning.
Or Chattanooga, I don't know
Okay.
which, but it's
The reasoning potentially is we can do it faster, not the
Delays.
Because that's been a long-running thing, I think, with the fire marshal's office, and I think it's gotten quite a bit better from what I understand. You all deal with it more than I do, a lot of you do, but it just took so long to get things through there at some point that I think some of the local jurisdictions took on some of the responsibilities to do some of those review efforts and stuff. So I'm not sure if this is that much different than what's going on now. It may just clarify some of the lines that are on there. It wouldn't allow smaller jurisdictions to do it, but they're not doing it now. So.
if I understand this exemption, that means that the exemption applies unless it's a E, or I occupancy, assembly, education, and industrial. So right now, I guess for residential and healthcare, it already is exempted.
Yeah.
So I guess they wouldn't be changing. What they're talking about is having the AE and I occupancies also exempted as well as the rest of them. So right now, I guess the residential and health are already exempted for that smaller size project.
Okay. John, when we get to your section, we can give you our position officially, and we'll tell you. We'll bring it back up again.
Another question, since you brought up earlier somebody wanting to lower the requirements, and I know that's a different thing about seismic requirements, but let's say you approve this one, then if you approve the other one, you're giving somebody
right.
the ability to lower their standards.
Do whatever they want to.
So definitely you don't want both of them to be done.
Good point.
And I prefer not either one.
Yeah.
And would the first bill that we talked about, where they could adopt a different code, would it be acceptable if it were amended not to include commercial buildings? If it were just residential?
I have a personal opinion, if you're in a seismic zone, then you need to be
You
designed.
need to be taken
Yeah.
care of.
You know, I wouldn't want to, if that's their purpose, you know, I wouldn't want to approve something like that if you're increasing the safety risk of the people involved.
I don't understand everything, so I probably almost make a statement here somewhat out of ignorance, but when part of some of the codes that came about 4 or 5 years ago, and this may be the last SBC code, I can't remember, but local jurisdictions were allowed to opt out of certain sections of that. And one that comes to mind was fire protection, because I think one of the codes had like 1,000 gallons a minute, and most jurisdictions can't meet 1,000 gallons a minute for fire protection. So they were like, so I wonder why this is even kind of coming up. It seems they could opt out of sections, and maybe they can. Maybe that's just the reason that they can't opt out of any of it. They have to take it all or none. I don't know, but it would seem like you could opt out of certain sections, and this becomes a moot. Why make it a state law that starts a whole chain of events potentially across the state? Why not keep it local and opt out of that provision? So, but like I said, that's something to think about.
Yeah, we'll probably want to kind of spend a little time discussing,
Okay.
get our position out there. So, I mean, coming from Candice is a good report.
Yeah,
Keep
but
us
I
informed.
don't know all the intricacies of it either.
Right.
Because I'm a lobbyist. I'm not an engineer or an architect or an interior
I
designer.
thought you've been around so long that you are one of us. Anyway, go ahead, Candice. Thank you. Thank you. That's good input.
And there's one other one, and this might actually qualify as wacky bill of the week. And it says that on state property, I don't know if it's local property also, but state property, on steps within or leading up to any public building, you have to have black and yellow, low vision, anti-slip paint, which is 2 inches thick on the edge of every step.
It's
2
not thick this
inches
way.
thick.
This,
The wide,
Yeah.
the
The
width is not the thickness.
it's not worded correctly.
It's not worded that way, Susan.
It's 2 inches wide,
Wide.
not thick.
The state architect interpreted it to be 2 inches high.
No, it's going to cost more. Trip hazard.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a lot of paint.
Raise your foot 2 inches higher.
Going down the first step is going to be what gets you.
Yeah, you won't have a problem with the rest of them.
Right.
What's the bill number?
That's House Bill 744, Senate Bill 932.
But I think that might be covered under ADA. I'd have to look, but I think ADA might have a provision in there for that.
The high reflectance is what they have, and it's an advisory. Give me a second, I had to send that to somebody, I can look it up. But it doesn't state anything about being yellow or black or anything like that, just a contrast.
And this is not the first time this has been introduced. It was introduced last session, too. I don't remember who the sponsors are.
I remember that.
Hopefully, the state architect has just misinterpreted the 2 inches. We will have on March 4th a legislative reception, and you all are invited to attend that. And we will have Engineers Day on the Hill the next morning, where we will talk about issues which our legislative committee will determine this Friday. So I'm kind of stepping out on a limb, but Robert said it was probably a decent limb to step out on, talking about codes. And then our Engineering Excellence Awards banquet is on that evening, March 5th, and I hope you all got invitations. Okay. And, we'd love to have you come sometime, and I understand why you don't want to drive over from Knoxville for that. That's all that's going on right now. And Math Counts will be on March 16th, which is always fun. Math Counts is a program, I see you, for 6th through 8th graders. It's a local and then a state competition, and the winners go to a national competition. And it's amazing to see some of those kids do problems in their heads just that fast. One kid a few years ago wore a T-shirt that said he didn't trust his calculator.
And most of them solve them before you can read them. It's the crazy
Just out of
part.
curiosity, did anybody compete in the state math competition when they were in?
Are you kidding?
The state math, you know,
I was learning how to tie my shoelace.
They were.
You did, Ricky?
I did
the
too.
state math, yeah.
All right.
Ricky, I was just learning how to tie my shoelace.
Candy, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you for the information that you sent from the Municipal Securities Rulemaking Board on the letter. I think that, I didn't know if you were going to talk about that or not, but I appreciate ACEC's response. I think there are a couple of things that they need to be, I can talk to you after this if you like.
Or actually just communicate them to Catherine Motley.
Okay. Not Ronald Smith.
Oh, okay, Ronald Smith.
Well, he's with MSRB. I don't know who this letter came from because it wasn't signed.
Well, that's a draft of a letter that ACEC is going to send, isn't it?
I'm not sure. I know.
It's a draft.
Okay. Okay. I'll do that.
Okay.
I may do that. Can you resend that to me?
I'll look for it, Alton.
Okay.
Any other question for Candy? Thanks for the report, Candy.
Thank you.
That, I don't have the rest of the society not here. What happened to the interior architects?
They are having a board meeting today. That's why, and Connie is at that board meeting. You having your meetings on Wednesday afternoon has just kind of messed with her mind.
Change is good, yeah. Tell her change is good.
Right.
Thanks again, Candy. With that said, we'll go on legal reporting. Mr. Attorney,
Alrighty.
if you want to know the page number, I can tell you. Page 25.
All right. It looks long, but it's not really. We'll start. Let me see what page this is.
Page 25.
All right. First thing on the very top is another question that's come up from experience with our litigator. If you remember, I asked if y'all would just punt those privilege tax cases to an ALJ so you don't have to sit here and listen to. Well, this is a similar question on the top. May cases involving reciprocal discipline, when referred for a formal hearing and not involving any further question of fact, be prosecuted before an administrative law judge sitting alone? If y'all want to give us that authority, then whenever consent order is refused or never comes back, we can just send it right to Adrian and he can set up a hearing without bringing it before the board.
Do you recommend that?
If there's no other finding of fact that you really need to know about. You know, these are just because they were disciplined somewhere else.
Right. So it's just a formality.
Right.
No, yeah, no different than when we approve exam, when they follow model law, and I think John go through it, meet all the criteria.
I agree.
And those are ultimately reviewable by the full board. You know, so if we reported to you what the ALJ decided and you didn't like it, you could always review that.
And certainly if there's some kind of, you know, what we would think is something that you need to determine as a fact, it would come here anyway. Have you ever had a case where the discipline in another state, I guess the decision reached there was different than what this board has reached? Like, I don't know whether laws might be different or
Sometimes
attitudes. Is it? Sometimes they're not what we would do. We would do.
But generally, if the applicant accepts that, he's acknowledged he's in violation.
It has to be a final
Yeah.
decision.
Yeah. So once the decision's final, they've accepted it. I'm not sure that it would make a lot of difference if the jurisdictional boundaries were separated or if our rule may be slightly different than theirs.
The reason for discipline would be because there was a final decision, and that's the facts. And you already don't need to find that that's the case, and that's the idea. When those come up, we don't have to bring them.
And then they can, I mean, there's always the appellate process.
Right.
Once they, I guess, executed their term of violation, they can appeal for, or apply for reinstatement, and then we can review the case at that time.
Or if they don't like what the judge rules,
Right.
they can appeal to the board.
Yeah.
So, in terms of the motion,
I mean, does our input before the fact, would it have, how much bearing does it have on what the administrative law judge would come up with? Is he strictly, I mean, he's looking at the fact from the case, not necessarily our discussion of it?
Well, I'm sure that the consent order would become an exhibit, wouldn't it? And the judge would see, articulated in the notice of hearing and charges what they did, or allegedly did what they did in the other jurisdiction. It came to us, and we assessed the penalty based on that. And I guess the judge would look at how
The ALJ would want to know kind
your
of
reasoning
what the
is.
A&E board generally does with those types of cases. And I would, in my closing arguments, ask for or suggest a particular discipline. So I would need to know generally, and I'm sure Rob would let me know how the board imposes discipline in those cases.
So you would ask us to kind of give you our opinion of it before it went in front of the, I mean,
Right.
we would be almost another witness, for lack of a better word.
I could ask Rob what this board generally does with those types of cases, what kind of discipline you impose, and that would be all I would need to make an argument to the ALJ and ask that they impose a certain discipline.
just to prove that we're being consistent.
Right.
And we're not doing anything wild and crazy for this particular case. The question would be what Joe usually do. Is this consistent with what the board usually does? And it usually is. I mean,
So I'm assuming that the board has had these before and kind of has a pattern.
I'll, just another quick comment. On its surface, I don't mind doing this, but it's sometimes I wonder if we shouldn't at least see it beforehand because it may be something unusual. I mean, I'm looking at it from, if I'm the guy that's having the discipline, I would want my peers to at least say, yeah, before it went. I mean, that's just because then you're talking about appealing it, and appealing it, he has to, go out and do his own. He has to go through another process to do that. So I mean, that's just on its
What we're
surface.
talking about isn't what we're talking about. You presenting the case to the board.
yeah, you've already heard
and
the facts.
the board would authorize it for formal.
Okay.
And
Okay.
You already know.
So
then
we're-
they would go to
Okay.
the-
Okay. Oh, good. So we've already had our chance to weigh in.
Right.
Okay. Okay. I got you.
The judge would just want to know that you were consistent in how you reached
Okay.
the settlement offer.
I'm with you now.
Yeah, it's just easier to schedule administrative judges, and, without the board, because we don't have to tie up your schedule to do that.
You can do 3 or 4 of them once.
Any other question, discussion? Well, I mean, what I'm hearing from you, Mr. Attorney, is that you want us to get a motion to move
Yes.
forward, give you the authority. So, do I hear a motion? Can you help us state the motion for us? What would you like the motion to be?
Okay, I guess
Well, just sort of like what how the question is sort of worded.
It could be a motion that in cases involving.
Let's just do it that way. I'll make the motion. In cases involving reciprocal discipline, when referred by a formal hearing and not involving any further questions of fact, that case can be prosecuted before an administrative law judge sitting alone. That's my motion.
Okay, we have a motion, we have second. Any discussion, further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So you got it?
You just take the sentence and take out every fifth word. It seems to work out that way.
Every few words? No, I thought it was every 10 words for me.
All right,
Rick Thompson brought me the
the first heading is one lonely case under.
It's on page 25 if you want to go.
I'll read it into the record. Case number 2012-010151. This complaint was previously presented to the board at its June 13th, 2012 meeting as follows. The complaint alleges the respondent, an engineer, failed to comply with an audit of continuing education hours in violation of the applicable rules. The respondent did not respond to any communication from the board staff, and there is no complaint history for the respondent. So at that meeting, the board accepted the recommendation to authorize a formal hearing and issue a consent order for a penalty of $1,000 in recognition of the lack of response, a 90-day period in which to catch up with the continuing education hours, and a requirement to submit to an automatic audit of the new renewal cycle, and a requirement to take and pass the long rule exam, which is the same thing we do in this situation. Then, at the December 5, 2012 meeting, and after the respondent returned an acceptable audit, the board was recommended to rescind the consent order, issue a letter of warning with the requirement to take and pass the law and rule exam. After discussion, the board voted to maintain the previous settlement offer with a reduced civil penalty of $150. Okay, well that didn't go well either, and it went back to litigation. So the update is, after the matter spent some time in litigation, it was discovered that the respondent had in fact communicated with the board and complied with all rules, although the board records weren't immediately clear on the issue. There'll probably be questions about that, and that's why Adrian's here. So the recommendation is to dismiss and close the case to the lack of disciplinary ground. So Adrian's a lot more familiar with what's going on here.
Well, I was preparing this matter recently. I was actually preparing a notice of charges on it. And the respondent asked if he could meet with me. And I said, well, sure, I'm always open to that. Bring with you any proof that you have that you responded to the December 15th request for information. He came in very courteous, very respectful, and he showed that December 15th, that's the date on our letter that went out saying you've been selected for an audit. He shows in his paperwork that he received that December 19th, and he says, I contacted the staff on December 28th to ask them for an electronic version of the form that I report on. They sent it to me, and then on December 30th, I sent all this information in. Well, it's not in the paperwork that the staff has, but it's a situation where he says, look, I sent it in. He's got a copy of what he says he mailed. He's also presented me with a copy of the email that the state sent him with the attachments in the form of the electronic format. So, make a long story short, I have no reason to doubt the gentleman's credibility. I know he's correct in saying that we sent him something on December 28th, so he was communicating, and another thing is, it's not as if when he sent the audit in, he was trying to catch up or anything. He already had the hours, so I just think there's a real question as to whether there was any violation. And with that in mind, I would hope that the board would not want to pursue with that course of action. If there's any questions about my meeting with them, I'll be glad to answer anything.
Go ahead.
This is 2 questions. Question number 1, thanks. I mean, I think those are opportunities that we have to, sit down with somebody. So thank you for doing that, because that's a part of what we did. But the second part of the question is, he sent it in electronically. How is that? Because I know I've sent things out email before, and it didn't bounce back, but the people swear that. I mean, people that would generally lie to me swear they didn't get it.
No, he didn't submit it. What he says is that he called in the office asking if we could email him a format, the spreadsheet that he uses. So we sent an email with that attachment, but he printed that out and mailed it in.
Okay, so he did mail it in.
That's what he says, and again, I have no reason to doubt the guy's credibility. He's got a complete copy of his transmittal letter with everything he sent.
Right.
Well, did he resubmit that?
Well, he did. On January 25th, we sent him a second letter saying that we've not received the information. It was never claimed by him. He says, I was on vacation for an extended vacation. After that point, we sent another notice, but we sent it to an old address for a business that is bankrupt. So when they finally made connections, he did resend it in, and we got that.
Good.
So,
and does he meet the criteria?
Yeah. Yeah, his office.
See, Matt Odom.
We really don't think that he ever didn't. That's what it turns out to be. He tried to comply with the audit, it seems like, and we thought he didn't.
So your recommendation is to dismiss and close the case?
Yeah.
So moved.
A second.
Second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, you got it. Thanks.
All right. Second heading is case with new information. I think there's only one under that one, too. Yeah. 2012-024111. And this complaint was presented at your last meeting on December 5th. As follows. The complaint alleges the respondent, licensed PE, committed misconduct by having his license suspended in another jurisdiction in violation of our statute and our rule for misconduct. The original matter was relative to the respondent being found to have practiced engineering on 5 confirmed occasions during the period of February 1, 1995 and September 21 of 2009 on a license which had expired without being renewed. The respondent's license was reactivated on September 21 of 2009. The disciplining jurisdiction assessed a civil penalty of $9,500 based on $500 for each of the 15 years that the license was lapsed, and $400 for each of the 5 confirmed instances. Additionally, the respondent's license was suspended for 45 days, received a public reprimand, and was required to complete 5 hours of continuing education on ethics. And for us, there's no complaint history for him. Okay, at that meeting, the board agreed by vote to offer a consent order for a penalty of $500 and a requirement to take and pass the law and rules exam. Now, after getting that settlement offer, I heard back in writing. So after the consent order was received, the respondent submitted a letter asking the board to reconsider the decision based on the respondent's prior intention, saying he'd already made this decision not to renew his Tennessee license upon its expiration on January 31st, 2014. His intention is of December 20, 2012, which was the date of the letter, to retire from the practice of engineering at the end of 2012. The respondent is licensed in several other jurisdictions with various renewal requirements, and the respondent resides in a state other than a disciplining jurisdiction. So he lives in state A, State B was the disciplining jurisdiction, and then we disciplined him for that. So, the recommendation, based on the lack of disciplinary history and the fact that the disciplining jurisdiction was not the respondent's home state, that he's retired from engineering with no intention to renew in Tennessee, the recommendation is to suspend the respondent's license until its expiration at the end of January of 2014 and refuse to renew the respondent's license after expiration.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and second. Do we have any more discussion or further discussion? We now hear a motion.
Yeah, just, I still wonder why. He practiced 15 years and had 5 projects under his belt.
I thought about
And even though he's going to retire, I can get.
I thought about revocation, but he has no history with us and he didn't do anything here. Then I thought about, well, I never think about surrender. I thought about surrender as if revoked because we need some kind of disciplinary action. We don't want to just accept a surrender.
There's an easy way out, yeah.
Yeah.
Surrender.
You can just say, I don't want it anymore. That's not discipline. So the discipline would be to suspend him here until he expires.
And then never renew him anymore. That's punishment.
So that's sort of a constructive revocation.
They refuse. Refuse a good word, or a better word would be never renew.
Decline. Depends on diplomatic.
I sort of agree with Robert, though. I mean, I'm generally not an advocate for punitive damages, but the guy practiced 15 years. He did 5 projects in Tennessee while he was not licensed.
So now he did 5 projects in another state.
Unlicensed?
He never did anything here. Yeah.
No,
I'm sorry.
Okay.
My misunderstanding.
And another thing that I didn't mention in here is that none of the allegations against him were ever for being incompetent. So apparently, even though he was doing stuff without a current license, he wasn't incompetent.
So at the end of 2014, you weren't saying he writes, he can never reapply back to the state.
Right.
So he's done.
And he can't practice on his current license because it'll be suspended.
Right. He's done from this point. Okay. Any other discussion? No, you all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Thank you. Next.
All right, next heading. These are going to be the fun ones. Cases under board member review. First one is the one Alton's been working on diligently. This is case number 2012-02333 or 3371. The board was made aware of this matter at its December 5th meeting and agreed to wait for the results of an informal conference based on the following. The complaint alleges misconduct, alleges the respondent, a licensed PE, committed misconduct for providing engineering services outside his area of competence in violation of our statute and our rules. In particular, the matter involves services provided to review the condition of a large culvert relative to its structural soundness at an airport. The materials were forwarded to an associate board member for review to determine any probable cause for discipline based on the allegations and improper practice. That was Mr. Heathcote. At the initial presentation, the board was informed by Mr. Heathcote that he'd identified some issues that impact structural engineering at a level that needed more specialized analysis. We then obtained the services of a trained and qualified structural engineer specializing in airport and runway construction to answer some concerns of the board member. After that analysis, an informal conference to address the professional conduct issues was held last week, February 6th. In attendance was the executive director, Mr. Heathcote, the structural expert, who happened to be approved for litigation if we needed him, the respondent, and the board's attorney, which is me. So at this point, I'm going to let Mr. Heathcote tell you what he thinks.
Yeah, thanks for assigning me this case.
Yeah, it was fun.
It was fun. Not really. And thanks everybody for allowing me the latitude to to go out and procure the services of somebody that I felt like was eminently more qualified than me to make a determination about whether or not the structural integrity of this particular structure was at risk. As it turns out, that evidently was moot. The specific area that the complainant entered the complaint against the engineer about was not on the site that the engineer conducted the review for. And I can understand the confusion. It's a large urban airport with multiple runways. One of the runways is used by a heavy freight carrier, and the other runways are used by the urban airport. The structure that the claimant claimed was at risk runs under both the urban airport and the freight carrier runways. The consulting firm was hired to do an evaluation under the urban airport's runways, that part of the structure. We went on and asked them the 37 questions that we had, and they proved to be very competent. They had followed all the protocols, all the appropriate procedures. The structural engineer was very comfortable with their findings and results. With the test that they authorized, we asked questions about, had you reviewed the previous design? What did you incorporate into your field study? Did you coordinate with, there was a previous study that was done in 2006 by a different consulting firm. Had you reviewed that data? Did you review the claims made by the claimant? All good answers. So our recommendation is to dismiss this claim against the respondent. But the respondent did note during this hour and 15-minute teleconference that while they were on site doing the investigation on this section of box culvert under the urban airport runways, another firm was similarly doing a similar investigation under the air freight carrier's runway. And because of some of the issues that were raised by the claimant, it's enough that we think justifies at least a letter of instruction or a letter of caution to the freight carrier, advising them of our concerns. They're well aware of the complaint, but I feel compelled as a board, I think it's our responsibility, if we know that something like this exists, that they understand that they need to exercise all due diligence in an engineering review of this structure. So I'd like the board's authorization to allow Rob to craft this letter to this freight carrier with an expression of our concern and a request that they exercise due diligence in their review of the complaint.
Question. The freight carrier, he's a professional engineer himself, or is this letter going to go to the professional engineer or to the company?
It would go to the company who apparently has hired. They have professionals on staff, but they apparently hired a consulting firm to review this structure.
Right.
And we'd just like to ensure that they exercise the same level of due diligence that the firm that the complaint was entered against made in their review, and that their findings are followed. Whatever their findings or recommendations are followed.
I don't know, just my personal opinion. If you write a letter to a company, I would say what bearing we have. And remember, the function of this board, we are to regulate XDR profession. So would that be another letter that we put together and go to waste, or is that a letter that will get somebody else's attention?
I think regardless, we're all professionals. And it's our obligation and the duty and responsibility of this board to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. I think this has the potential to impact the health, safety, and welfare of the public. Even though a complaint was not formally entered against either, well, it wasn't entered against any firm that was doing work under this site, it's enough to be, we've been alerted to the fact that this problem exists. Regardless of whether the respondent for this case had nothing to do with this section of the box culvert, we still know that there's enough evidence out there to indicate that it could pose a threat to the public's health, safety, and welfare, and I think we have an obligation as a profession to advise them of our concern.
So, I mean,
Any other opinion?
Alton, you're just wanting us to say to this consulting firm that's doing the study, make sure you do your study correctly?
Actually, it would be to the company that authorized. We don't know who the consultant is that did the study.
Is the runway actually owned by the airport authority, or is it owned by the freight company?
We're not clear on that. It's operate. I'm sorry, but we don't know who owns it. We know who operates it, and it's operated and utilized by the freight company.
I bet it's owned by Metropolitan Airport Authority's land and all of that sort
I'm
of.
pretty sure that you're correct.
So if you go out there today, that runway is safe. In your mind, it's done correctly, designed correctly.
The side that has the inspection done and the engineering evaluation done, yes. The other side that was actually the subject of the complaint, even though he named the wrong respondent, this side, there is some speculation as to whether or not it's safe.
Does this require the freight company to report back to us at some point in time and say this, to me, this go back and forth.
I'm not sure they're required to respond back to us at
No,
all.
they're not. No, okay.
But at least I think we would have exercised our responsibility as a professional board to alert them that we know about this and it's a concern, and we hope that we hope that they treat this with the umbrage that it deserves, and that they've had professional people qualified to.
I thought you said they had hired somebody.
They have.
Okay.
We
don't know who it is.
and we haven't seen the results, and no claim yet has been made against either the carrier or the consultant that they hired to do that inspection.
How are you going to interject?
No, I'm good.
You're good.
I heard
You
what I
heard.
needed to hear, yes.
I see a hand here.
Right. The person that made the complaint to the board, if they now, knowing that that was the wrong person, if they refocus their complaint to the freight carrier.
I don't think that we held this informal conference on the 6th. I don't think the complainant has been made aware yet, because we had to bring it back for formal board action. So we haven't made the claimant aware of what this board's action is.
But that will be an assumption that if they found out that they were aiming at the wrong party, that they would refocus.
Given the volume of the complaint and the number of people that were recipients of copies of this and that have been engaged in this complaint, I'd say it's a safe bet that this claimant will probably enter a claim against whoever this is.
Rob?
The issue raised against the freight carrier's consultant's report is serious enough that if it's not addressed or could be.
It wasn't raised against the freight carrier's consultant.
But it's potential, if the freight carrier's consultant does not take this into consideration or look at this or something, their report could be in error and it could cause catastrophic loss of life, property, whatever.
Yes.
Okay, I go along with that.
Okay. So with that said, that's the pleasure of excuse me, Elton. I'm sorry.
It's easy to get us fixed up.
You guys look so much alike, I can't put you so basically your recommendation is right, to give authority to let our attorney craft a letter to this company about our concern. So, and then dismiss the case.
Correct.
Okay, I need a formal motion for someone.
I make a motion that we adopt Alton's recommendation to write a letter to the freight authority that concerns have been raised from a claimant on a adjacent case that may have bearing on the soundness of a culvert going under their runway, and they should evaluate that. I think that's my motion. Because I agree also.
But also
with,
you're going to
dismiss
the case. I agree with what Will said. I don't want to get into the middle, but if there's something that's significant there, that if you just check that, I think it's ounce of prevention type thing.
Agree. And I think it's our duty and obligation as professionals to do that.
Okay, we have a motion for Robert.
I'll second.
Having a motion and second, any more discussion? Yes, sir. Ricky?
If you, Wilson's point that it may be a municipal airport, if you're going to notify the freight company, wouldn't you want to notify the municipality because it's their problem?
They have been.
They have been notified?
Yes, extensively.
About the freight carrier's problem? Okay.
So in your letter, will you copy them too? Copy them? Or do we have to put that in the motion again?
Let me revise the motion that we'll send the letter to whoever the managing entity is for the freight part of the airport.
I'd say the owner and the manager, because it may be separate.
You're right, okay.
So you still okay with the second? Will?
Well, could I ask you to split the motion, I guess? To dispose of this case, it'll be a dismissal. But then you can, close the case out, and then if you want, you can make direct us to send that letter. That way we deal with the case all by itself. Then we can have another direction to the staff.
I've got to withdraw my damn motion.
No, you don't.
Yeah, I have to withdraw it so I can make a new one. I don't want to go back through the process. Let me just withdraw and we'll start up from scratch.
Okay.
You rescind your.
Yes.
We'll
start
Just
from
take care
scratch.
of the case.
Okay, go ahead, your motion.
New motion.
It'd be cleaner to vote his motion.
Well, let's just say, I move that we dismiss the case.
Yes.
Okay.
I second.
Here, a second? Okay, thank you. Any more discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion
Okay,
carried.
now you
Now,
can
Mr.
direct
Kimball.
the board staff to send a letter based on Elton's discussion.
I direct the board staff to send a letter to the owner and manager of the airport facility that utilizes the freight airport, or freight runway, that there is a potential issue that they need to be made aware of that could impact the safety of a box culvert that runs under their runway facility. Is that close?
Not exactly, I don't think.
Well, it may not be.
Well, to the consulting, owners, consulting engineer?
We don't know
No.
who it is.
We don't know who that is.
No. Okay.
Let me just talk a minute without putting it in the form of a motion, see, Robert, if this comes.
You're better at this than I am, right?
No, that I think what we're trying to do is to notify the freight carrier with a copy to the airport authority owner and/or manager that there is a possibility that there is a problem in the culvert under their runway, and we would like for them to exercise all due diligence in investigating that and remedying it if they find that there is true problem.
Get all that down? That's a good motion.
I second.
Sounds good to me.
All right.
I'm fine.
So we got a motion from Wilson, second by Jerome. Any other discussion? Having none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Move for a brief recess.
All right. I hear somebody will move for a brief recess.
That was
Do I second the motion first?
What, does this make sure that I'm not gonna get sick because you're gonna go to the bathroom?
No, I'm not going to the restroom.
Okay. I'll second that
Do
then.
we have a second on it? Yeah, a motion is a second.
Second, anybody?
I'll second it. Thank
You
God.
second it? Oh, I need to, okay. 5 minutes recess. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The only one that has this grasp is Robert Stores and
Hey.
I know y'all probably you need to sit up there next to Phil. So you don't have to do that.
Wilson knew the original Robert, though. That's
Okay.
Okay, you can call it back to order.
Yeah, let's call the meeting back to order. And Robert, you take over.
All right, the next, that would be on page 28 of your pad, number 2. Case number 2012-025741. And the complaint alleges the respondent, a licensed architect, committed misconduct of providing design services outside the area of competence. In this case, mainly structural engineering, but stamping all phases of the church facility's construction documents in violation of TCA 622306 by affixing a stamp by a design professional or under the appropriate rule under service in areas of competence, which says a licensee may only perform services for which he or she is qualified and may not accept work for which he or she is not qualified and may not seal or stamp the work of others while not in responsible charge. Possibly Rule 0120-0207. They may not assist unlicensed individual in the performance of regulated activity. And finally, the rule about seals, where they may not affix or seal any work for which they're not in responsible charge. All these materials were forwarded to Associate Engineer Board member for review to determine any probable cause for discipline based on the allegation of improper practice. That happened to be Mr. Versailles. And last note is there's no complaint history for this particular register. So Ricky, if you want to tell the board what you think.
I will. The quick facts, this architect prepared a set of drawings for a church building, and the state fire marshal brought it to our attention because the architect stamped every sheet in the set. There were 6 or 7 architectural sheets, 3 structural sheets, an M sheet, a P sheet, and a couple of E sheets.
And the architect.
So, and he did, this is exactly from our reference manual. It says state fire marshal should notify the AE board when that happens, and he did. And then he also, straight out of our reference manual, sent a letter for the respondent to sign that says, I was in responsible charge of all the sheets, and the second statement says, I am
Duly licensed. Yeah.
well, I'm
Competent.
competent in these areas, and he listed structural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing.
So this is a classical textbook case.
Well, the respondent crossed out the second statement when he sent the letter back. So, and he said that he signed the letter without the second statement. So it says he was in responsible charge, but crossing it out would say he's not competent in those disciplines. So that's a that's a kind of a problem right there.
Implies admission.
So, but looking at the drawings that he did, this is a case where this church is a pre-manufactured metal building, and typically the designers, and normally it would be a structural engineer, would do a foundation plan, and the metal building might go out as a performance spec that the pre-manufactured metal building company would have engineers licensed in the state of Tennessee that would do shop drawings that would be a licensed design according to our laws and rules. In addition to that, there was a mezzanine level that has framing in it that the metal building company that wouldn't normally do, that somebody on the design team would do. So the architect had sheets in the set taking care of the foundation plan, the foundation design, and this framing for this mezzanine. And in his, there were a couple of letters of response from the architect where he said his intent was to do bridging documents, which are incomplete documents that would then go to a design build contractor who would either have licensed designers on staff who would do the work, or the contractors would hire designers.
Question, Ricky.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Ricky. But did he seal those documents?
All of them were sealed.
Okay.
All of them were sealed. And the other problem besides that is the 3 S sheets, structural sheets. They were the foundation design. They had a different title block. All of his other sheets had a kind of hand lettering, and the architect's title block. These 3 structural sheets had the title block of an engineering company that's out of state.
They probably did the stuff for the pre-manufactured building.
This wasn't a pre-manufactured building. This was a foundation design, but this was, and it had a drawn by and checked by initials different from the architect in the title block. So it looked like there were sheets that came from out of state done by somebody else that were stamped by the architect. In his letters, he explained that this was they have this a group of people who have a mission to do these build these churches for this denomination, and he utilizes this draftsman who works for this company, as well as other engineers, that they're a team that builds these things. So with all that looked at, and then looking at our laws and rules and guidelines, it looks like to me that he violated the law we have on seals, and then we have a rule on seals, that he violated those two, because from all appearances he stamped 3 S sheets that he didn't produce. Beyond that, there's a concern with the other sheets that he submitted to the state fire marshal, incomplete sheets. He's saying in his letter they're incomplete because they're bridging documents, but there's not a whole lot of appearance of that. There's a note on the cover sheet that fire protection would be done, design build, and he's asking for design to be done. There's a note on the HVAC sheet that says this is incomplete, design build contractor shall submit a design. There's no note on the electrical drawings to that effect, or the plumbing. So it's a little, it's of concern, I think, that this whole set went to the state fire marshal, and had the state fire marshal approved it, I think it would have gone to contractors to build. Probably, I don't know that, but his answer is it would have gone to contractors to design build, who I guess would have reissued a finished design. But my recommendation is that the law and the rule that he violated, that he be fined for that. The range on the law is $250 to $1,000. The range on the rule about seals is 100 to 1,000, and I would suggest something on the lower end of that because I think he responded to everything we needed. I think the actual designs look like they wouldn't have caused anybody harm. The foundation designs look to be reasonable and proper, and he was probably trying to help the public out with this mission that he's got in building these churches. So I would recommend a fine of something like $300 for the one offense and $100 for the other. That would total $400 or so. I would also recommend that a letter of warning be sent to him about practicing outside his area of competence, and that would also cover the ground that when you do bridging documents that are incomplete, our reference manual makes it clear you need to identify those documents as preliminary, not for construction, so that any of that going in front of anybody, including the state fire marshal, would know the intent there. I think the intent was, it was at best case it was sloppy, and could have resulted in something that we don't want to allow. So that's the recommendation on a fine and a warning.
Vicki, which rules?
Okay.
Which specific rules?
I'm seeing that TCA 62-2-306B is a law about stamping work that you didn't do.
I think
The rule is 120.
I didn't read it in the record, but I think I put all the citations in here.
So that's the law. I guess you asked about rule.
The rule is 120.
The rule is
120.02.03 is service in areas of competence.
Right, and I didn't see that. I didn't know for sure that he had violated that, because from appearances it looked like the framing plan that he did on the A sheet looked reasonable. And I had a structural engineer look at it, and the ME sheets that he did are somewhat reasonable for bridging documents, that he says that was his intent. They're not, they wouldn't, if he said those were final documents, that would prove he's not competent, but he said that was not his intention. So I think the rule and law he broke were really sealing sheets, and so I think the rule was 0120-02-.08 about sealing work that you didn't do, and then the law is similar to that.
And also, you recommend a letter of warning too?
I recommend that he be fined for the rules and the law that he violated, and that then he be warned about practicing within his area of competence and issuing incomplete sheets without proper identification.
Okay. We have...
Law rules exam?
Yeah, of course.
Taking past law rules exam. There you go. Yes. Yeah, I was going to let you get away with that. Thanks for reminding me. So we have a recommendation from our member. Review this case. Do I hear a motion to adopt the recommendation from Ricky?
Would that be a motion that you?
No, he's an associate member.
You can't make.
Somebody has taken this motion.
Oh, that's right. That's what Robert needs to practice.
Robert's made two so far. I think it's time for somebody else to wordsmith.
Why don't you articulate the motion?
Sure, go ahead.
As it should. Being new to the board, the fine seemed low to me. Is that
Compared to what we usually do, it's pretty low.
We've got a precedent for this. We had one earlier last year, about a year ago, very similar. An individual who did an assembly. It was a church building. And we had several violations of both the laws and the rules, and it had an associated punitive charge with it. I don't remember what all the numbers were, but we've got that. Real close to this.
You can be real creative because each drawing he stamped is a violation.
It could be
Rules is a
$150.
violation. So
You say $150 a sheet, no matter how many sheets of paper they stamp.
It was, as far as the stamping violation, that was 3 sheets.
So it's $450 right there. If you want to go
or
that way.
or you could say the whole thing is one violation. It just depends on how you want to articulate it.
Yeah, and to give the recommendation and looking at the laws, there's underneath the civil penalty amounts, it says in determining the amount of civil penalty to be assessed pursuant to this rule, the board may consider such factors, if this is in the rules, I guess, as the following. And the 4 that I thought about was the circumstances leading to the violation, the severity of the violation and the risk of harm to the public, the economic benefits gained by the violator as a result of non-compliance, and the interest of the public. And you're right, we don't want him doing what he did in Tennessee as far as stamping those drawings. As far as what the material presented, I don't doubt that he's done this for years and that there's a degree that he knows what he's doing, and especially with these pre-manufactured metal buildings, and that they turn out okay. But it is of concern because I don't think, I just suspect that from what he put on there, he hasn't kept up necessarily with all the latest with mechanical, electrical, and structural.
To that point, Frank, certainly the board can always amend the recommendation as a motion.
So your recommendation again is what exactly?
Mine was to look at it like 2 violations. It could be 3, but the 2 violations would be the law 62-2-306B. Look at that as 1 violation and be down on the lower end of that range, which I'm saying $300 is on the lower end. And then the violation of the rule would be the second part of the fine, the rule on sealing that has a range from 100 to 1,000, and being on the lower end of that, 100 added to the other 300 is 400. But
And also a letter of warning
and a letter of
take
warning.
the path
That
of all
sort of
rules.
comes with the consent order. That's part of the cover letter.
Go ahead, sir.
Concern a little bit is that, I think you stated it correctly, well, these drawings could have gone and been built. There was nothing in place to keep a design build contractor from going ahead and building it and not doing any design. They could just, because once you have the stamp, it's done. I mean, assuming that it would have gotten through. And I know we have to stamp things before we submit them to reviewing authorities, but there's nothing to keep him from doing that. My feeling is the electrical drawing had no disclaimer on it.
Correct.
So,
Nor did the plumbing drawing.
Correct.
so I think those 2 ought to be $1,000 a piece, just because, I mean, that could have gone straight through without any notation whatsoever and been built. And I think that's dangerous. I don't mind the area of competence stuff. A lower fine on that would be okay. $250 or whatever everybody else thought, but I just think those are because they didn't have any disclaimer and they didn't. Now the screwy thing about that way that's written is it says, I don't think it's a mandate that you have to have that under construction or review. I think it's a may or something. I don't think it's a whatever the declarative or whatever that word is, but that's just sloppy practice to not have something like that on
Yeah,
there.
and I didn't see, as far as the area of competence, that's why my recommendation didn't say to apply anything to that, because I didn't see a law or rule that I knew applied to this.
Of competence?
Of competence. It was really the seals law and rule that I thought was pretty clearly violated.
From what you're saying, if he marked out the part in his attestation saying he wasn't, implying he wasn't competent.
Let me just-
Competent, if he doesn't think he is, why would we?
For
I think you can make
clarification,
that case.
This,
Yeah.
under competence, number 1 says the registrant shall perform his services only in areas of his competence. The registrant shall undertake, perform professional assignments only when qualified by education or experience in the specific technical field involved.
That's
Which-
01/20/02.
03, which he didn't do.
Well, he's saying that the letters that he wrote were a little bit confusing. They went back and forth. But he's saying he's totally competent to do foundation drawings and light framing drawings that he did, design. And he's totally competent to do the bridging mechanical and electrical design that he did, the scope, which is really like a conceptual scope, schematic type design. He's saying he's totally competent, and in looking at what he did, had they been identified for that purpose, I wouldn't argue with that.
But is he a PE?
He's an architect in the state of Tennessee. If you're competent in doing mechanical design as an architect, I don't see anything in there that doesn't allow you to do that.
That's correct.
Well, it's got to be through education or experience.
Right.
Right, and he makes a case that as an architect, he says, I think it's pretty clear that he's an older architect, that in his education, they studied structure and HVAC, and between his education and experience, that he says that he's competent. Now, why he struck number 2 in that letter, the State Fire Marshal's letter, that's again one of these inconsistencies that I don't understand.
To me, strictly implies he does not acknowledge he was competent to do it.
Well, the way we would prove it, because we've had cases like this before where an architect, or it might have been the other way around, but at any rate, the stamp was not what, he might have been an engineer doing architecture.
Yeah.
Well, this doesn't look right, and this is an older case. As you look into it and you look at his file, it's like he has a degree in engineering or architecture. So, well, I guess he does have the education, even though he's not licensed. But it proves to us that he has the education. He can't just be, I believe I'm competent because of years of doing it. We need to know education, which is, you got a degree in it, or I worked on this job, this job, this job, this job, and I taught this class, or I went to this, or I did, something that proves. We have to know by your education or your experience, not just, well, I've done it a while.
Right.
Ricky, I assume what he's saying, though, is he's practiced a long time and he's done a lot of these type of structures and facilities, and by virtue of the fact that he's done it so long and been engaged in so many of these, he feels like he's competent.
That's what he's saying, that he's, because of, I guess, what he thinks, the way older architects were trained and what they used to handle, as well as these particular types of buildings, church, pre-manufactured metal church buildings, that he feels competent.
I disagree with that, but I understand
your
recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Do I hear a motion then? And of all this discussion, I think I'll have a motion before we move on.
Well, it's been discussed so much, I don't know. Again, if no one objects, and I hate to be repetitive, but can you succinctly state what you would like to see in the motion? Because there's been so much discussed.
$400.
At $400 I got.
Warning and take the rules and deal committee.
But the charge, the infraction is that they practiced outside their area of competence.
Now, the infraction is he sealed, improperly sealed drawings.
That's the infraction.
The infraction that he didn't prepare. That's the violation.
One law and one rule.
Correct.
The seals.
He sealed drawings that he didn't prepare under his responsible charge.
Okay, so the motion is that the registrant improperly sealed plans in violation of the stated law and rules that you have record of, and is hereby assessed a fine of $400 and a letter of warning.
And I would, I
You
like
don't
that.
need the letter of warning as
Okay,
part of it.
$400.
Civil penalty of $400, law and rule exam.
Okay.
And I don't know,
That's
well,
the
the other
motion.
part of, I guess, what I stated was, I'd like the, whatever letter it is, to warn of practicing outside his area of competence and stamping drawings that
That were
are
in the consent motion.
that are not marked to be clearly, that are clearly incomplete.
The letter's pretty clear. I use the letter to actually describe the board's reasoning.
Okay.
The consent order is just, is what you vote on that he actually did believe you and he violated. And as you can put in there, they talked to him, they believe this or whatever. I'll take care of it.
Okay.
So you do have a motion from Hal that we found this registered $400 based on violation of our rules and also our law and also the rules for planes sealing the plane, and also to take and pass the law and rules exam.
I will second
All right, any discussion? Thank you. No further discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Question, do we send a thank you note to the fire marshal's office for making us aware of these?
It's part of it.
We never have.
I talked to him for you.
Send them some flower. Valentine's Day. Thank you, Rob. You got it?
Something?
Thank you, Vicky.
All right, next page. This is one that Hal did. Case number 2012-026691. The complaint alleges the respondent, who's a licensed architect, committed misconduct by providing design services outside the area of competence by stamping all phases of a church facility as well. And I'm not even really going to get into it because I'm just going to let Hal explain what he found.
Okay. It's a very similar case.
It sounds so similar, I thought maybe I just cut and pasted. So go ahead and explain.
Well, this architect did do a set of plans for a church in Ottawa, which doesn't matter, I don't guess, but he did seal structural design plans, and the fire marshal as well called his and our attention to, or questioning his qualifications for such. So upon review, it appears that the registrant did violate the law and rules as it relates to practicing outside the area of competency. So I recommend appropriate action, which I'm open to discussion on the appropriate fines if the board so chooses.
Were there also plumbing, electrical?
They were sealed by an engineer.
Site plan too?
That was not sealed by the architect. They were the foundations specifically. So 2 sheets out of the entire set that were non-architectural were sealed by this registrant.
Mm-hmm. Has he claimed competence?
He did in his letter, but if you read the rules and law of what constitutes, although it's not defined, but what kind of work falls under the authority or competency of architects and that of engineers, foundations clearly listed with structural issues under an engineering responsibility.
Was the structural frame of this church supposed to be a pre-engineered building, or was it wood frame?
Wood frame. Trusses were manufactured. Foundation on a slab. And basic construction, but
Did he have any note on his framing? He must have had a roof framing plan. Did he make note that these were going to be pre-engineered trusses and
to
submit shop drawings?
It didn't mention shop drawings, but it did.
Well, then
reference.
then he would not be. The only thing he's done is he's got the walls up. the truss manufacturer is going to be providing shop drawings with all the engineering calculations.
Right.
So that part is taken care of right there.
It's for the foundation is the issue.
The foundation's the issue.
Yes, sir.
What,
He said, I believe that my experience and my profession qualify me to seal and sign a slab design for a 6,700 square foot frame building. The trusses were designed and sealed by a structural engineer.
it's a single-story structure,
It was
6,700 square feet.
I believe so.
And
But
what's
30
so
feet
difficult
high.
about designing a foundation for that?
Yeah.
I don't see that being necessarily out of his area of expertise. It's not a 2-3 story building.
It's not.
It's a turn down, it's a, I mean, what is it?
It's 33 feet high.
It's over 5,000 square feet.
Well, that's true. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying.
I think, I mean, again,
67, 65 square feet.
Single story, and you're saying 35, and it was 35.
33 feet high.
33, but the exterior walls couldn't be 33 feet high.
No, it has a peak. It has a gable.
Okay, do you know what the sill height is?
No. I mean, it's on the plan. I could read
Yeah.
it off the plan.
Oh.
I guess
Does that matter? I guess that my question is, I based it on the criteria that had been set for design and the limits of those designs, what constitutes the a licensed professional to be involved. And then even under that licensed professional eligibility, as it states in our legal laws and rules, what functions of building design fall under what profession. That was the basis of
It
my
just says,
recommendation.
it is unlawful for any person other than a registered architect or engineer to prepare plans and specifications for any building or structure other than the following. And we all know, less than 3 stories in height and less than 5,000 square feet. Well, this is less than 3 stories in height, but it's more than 5,000 square feet.
Well, he's a registrant. I mean, he's a
Registered
licensed
architect.
professional.
Yeah, exactly.
So the question to me is he qualified to do a foundation plan?
And he says he is.
He says in his letter that he is.
Did you ask for his design calculations, or did you have somebody look at it and see if it was properly designed, I guess?
I did not. Although John did send a letter to him indicating, I have reviewed this complaint and determined that the alleged conduct does not pose an imminent danger to public health, safety, and welfare.
It says the
That's a
architect.
standard. Then I understood it all.
Can we ask the architects, I mean, would it be standard protocol for you to do a slab design for a?
Yeah, if it's on grade, you're talking 1 story, sure.
Well,
And if I have a question, I've got a structural engineer, I can bounce it by, and he'll look at it, and if there's something that he says, well, you ought to go to this size rebar, you do that, and you change the note. But he's got himself, what he did was, you know, if the roof system itself is trusses, the truss manufacturer's going to
That's not the
find.
issue, right?
Yeah.
You're right, on the trusses. He's covered on that.
Yeah, but foundation is still,
I don't know that he's not qualified. If you want to go to the next level and have a
We can
structural.
request
Have a structural engineer look at it.
or get his design calcs.
Or
but,
get
I
his
mean,
design calcs before I vote to fine him $2,000. I'm not going down that path.
Go ahead, Rob. Question?
Let me just go ahead and make a motion, and you all turn it down. Before I make the motion, I want to ask that the architects introduce into your all's daggum curriculum a study of the New Testament. Because this render unto Caesar and unto God, those things which are God things, you all are forgetting all about here, all these church buildings that we're doing. So we need to work on that a little bit.
we know what to
We
do.
choose not to work on church buildings,
Right.
some of us.
Here's my motion. My motion is to issue a letter of caution, I think is our lowest,
Construction's the lowest, but that's for
the next letter, caution.
rookies.
That issue a letter of caution with no fine about to be careful about practicing outside your area of competence, because I agree, a slab on a 1-story building it's a 2 foot by 1 foot. I mean, it's very hard to screw that up, and it really is. And there's enough standards out there to do that. It's very hard. Now, there's some people that are talented enough to do it, but it's very hard to do that. So I'm talking about from the engineer's perspective as well. So my motion is to issue a letter of caution that warns the person that we've looked at their case, and while we can't, I don't know that we could prove or disprove that they practice outside their area of competence.
Without a lot of trouble.
Without a lot of, I mean, and then.
We could look into it by getting his.
I second your motion.
I mean, I just issue a letter of caution
Since this is
about.
relatively small.
There's the foundation system.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Just did it.
Yeah, I mean,
number 5 rebar.
Yeah.
So, hey, somebody send that to the fire marshal's office.
Picture seals.
Are we in
Okay, hold on. We got a motion, we got a second, open for discussion.
Two thoughts. I guess I'm hearing, and I didn't appreciate this, that this is considered a standard practice of architecture. So I'm okay with that if our professionals are saying so. And I think we should advise the fire marshal's office of such so they quit sending these kinds of things over, if that's the case.
Well, that is a question I have, Paul. The fire marshal, do they, if there's a seal by an architect on any other drawings than architectural drawings, do they immediately reject it?
I don't know.
Or did they look at the foundations and went, this guy doesn't know what he's doing?
I think anytime they see something from an architect, they all of a sudden become suspicious.
Ricky.
I mean, I would.
Okay, Ricky got something.
I had a different take on it. I like the state fire marshal sending anything that has somebody's stamp on it that appears to be out of discipline. It allows us to look at the design, and if the design looks good, that's great, but if it doesn't, we've protected some. So I would hate to discourage them
They used to automatically
from
do
sending
that.
us anything like that.
Whenever they'd see engineering drawings with an architect or vice versa, whenever they saw that, they'd automatically say whatever.
I would agree. I agree with them doing that. I mean, I
Whether
think
it has
that's a
merit
good
or
thing.
not.
And your other option could be that the architect provide a letter from the structural engineer that he's reviewed the design, reviewed the foundation, and the design is appropriate. He could, which would require the architect to hire a structural engineer to look at it and furnish a letter. That way, it just clears it all up, and that letter can go to the fire marshal's office, and they've got it in their file as well. That clears, which would clear that up completely.
The same letter that was in my case, we've got the form letter that says, I'm competent in this area. Did he sign such a letter?
I didn't see that in his file. I saw in the content of his response to John, and he replied pretty quickly. I mean, it wasn't like he drug this out or anything that I could tell, but he said, I believe that my experience and my profession qualify me to seal and sign
the foundation
slab design.
Well, would it be appropriate, since we have a form letter that basically says that where he has a chance to check it and sign it,
Did we send
would
him
that
that?
be appropriate here with the caution?
The letter of competence?
Usually it's a building official sends that.
Oh, is that right?
The fire marshals has one.
Yeah.
I didn't
There is one
require
for
you.
the fire marshal.
They do that pretty uniformly.
Okay.
If you don't have
That's
an
their first step.
engineer doing engineering and an architect doing architecture, they make you.
So that's how it came to us. We have a motion, we have a second, we have some discussion. Any more for discussion?
I have a comment.
Sure.
Seems to me, I would hate to be a registrar of this board and get one of those letters when I was qualified to do that. So it bothers me a little bit for us to send that letter.
Letter of caution?
Well, the letter of caution it's not as
I understand.
offensive as
But
it could be.
it's just sort of like something in your file.
Well, it's informal. I mean, it's not reported to NCAAS or anything. It's just something we keep.
But you'll go away
It
to
hurt
it.
my feelings. especially if I was qualified.
I do agree. Yeah. But I think it's always, what somebody said, it's always better to err on the doubting side than err on the extreme. So,
It's just telling you to be careful.
all right. So, any further discussion? Hearing none, let's call for a vote. Those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Get one opposed. With that, motion
I
carried.
move to disqualify Mr. Balthrup's vote on the fact that he's got a virus and he's sick.
He's just not
Out of his mind.
Not thinking clearly.
Please do not send him
He's
out.
obviously stricken with fever.
Did I shake your hand earlier when I came in?
Yeah.
I need to wash my hands. Okay. Too late. I haven't.
Robert, could you feel his forehead?
John, I'm going to tell you what you can do.
No touching. Okay, Mr. Attorney, next case, before we lose our control.
Next,
Yeah, I lost it a long time ago. Huh?
There's one case under new cases, and it's a garden variety expiration. Number 2013-001391, and this complaint alleges the respondent, licensed PE, provided engineering services for 2 documented projects while the license was expired in violation of 62.2.101, which means you got to have a license. Aggravating factors include the facts that the respondent did not self-report these instances, and there's a previous complaint for a similar violation on file for this registrant. So, the recommendation in light of the aggravators is authorize a formal hearing and issue a consent order for a civil penalty in the amount of $2,000, $1,000 for each instance of practice while expired, in consideration of the aggravating circumstances along with the requirement to take and pass the law rules exam.
It's good. Well, we got a recommendation for our attorney, and do I hear somebody make a motion on that? Before we can discuss.
So moved.
Okay, second to the motion?
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and second. Let's open for discussion. Hearing none, let's vote for it. And those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries, sir.
Now, the last heading is new privilege tax delinquency cases. There's like, 20. Rick's already counted them. So we're going to treat this like a sort of a consent agenda. I'm just going to read the general outline recommendation and just read basically the numbers into the record, and then you can wait till the end to decide what you want to do. If you want to accept the recommendation, or that'll be the shortest way.
Before you do this, I thought those got sent automatically. What did I miss?
Not these. Automatic ones are child support.
Child support.
And
They're still heard before an ALJ, but you have to authorize a formal hearing for them. And then we take them, the administrative law judge actually hears the cases.
yeah, you won't have to hear the formal.
So we're just, okay. Well, I just, for some reason, thought they automatically went in front of him when they did that.
Quick question. The, say like the first one, the bracketed 3 years, is that for 3 years of back? Oh, okay.
And that's in the introduction here. I'll tell you the authority for that. So the complaints allege the respondents, design professionals registered by the board, have failed to keep privilege taxes up to date for at least the last 2 years, despite being notified by the board staff. 2 years delinquency may result in suspension pursuant to 67-4-1704 and revocation in cases of 3 years. Under the authority of the board's rule, any delinquency over 2 years is grounds for discipline pursuant to 01-2002-07, which is misconduct. So the general recommendation is authorize a formal hearing and a consent order to suspend registration until all delinquent privilege taxes are proven to be current. The way we do that is we get notified by Department of Revenue that they're current. So I'll just go through them if there's no further comment. I'll just read them all. Number 1, 2013-00-1961, architect, 3 years. 2 is 2013-00-1971, architect, 3 years. Number 3, 2013-00-1981, architect, 2 years. Number 4, 2013-00-1991, architect, 2 years. 5 is 2013-2001, architect, 3 years. Number 6, 2013-00-2011, architect, 2 years. 7 is 2013-00-2021, architect, 2 years. 8 is 2013-00-2031, engineer, 3 years. 9 is 2013-00-2041, engineer, 3 years. 10 is 2013-00-2051, is an engineer for 3 years. 11, 2013-00-2061, engineer, 3 years. 12, 2013-00-2081, engineer, 2 years. 2013-00-2091, engineer, 3 years. 14, 2013-00-2101, engineer, 3 years. 15, 2013-00-2111, engineer, 2 years. 16, 2013-00-2121, engineer, 3 years. 17, 2013-00-2131, engineer, 3 years. 18 is 2013-00-2141, engineer, 2 years. 19 is 2013-00-2151, engineer, 2 years. Last one is 2013-00-2161, engineer, 2 years delinquent.
I would move to accept the staff's recommendation for all of the cases so read.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have discussion? If not, do I hear a motion in favor of that motion? Say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carried.
That's the legal report.
Next is, before the agenda is the John Director report. He's going to start with the licensing data. You want to page
No, I
turn
have
the page?
another report before that. Now
Before
that
that.
you're all fatigued, we will start my report.
You're, actually, the one I'm looking at, page 36 is what I have.
What do you say that we're all?
Yeah, licensing data is on page 36, so that's where
Is that what he said?
that portion of the report is fatigued. Everyone's fatigued. But before that, we have my oral report. National Council meetings, Philip Lim and I attended the NCEES Board President's Assembly in Atlanta last week. So we'll have a brief report on that later on the agenda, and a more detailed report during the Engineer Committee meeting tomorrow. Bill Lockwood has been approved to attend the CLARB Spring Meeting in Scottsdale, Arizona on March 1st and 2nd. Rick Thompson, Jerry Headley, and I have been approved to attend the NCARB Regional Meeting in Charleston, South Carolina on March 7th through the 9th. And Hal Balthrop, Ricky Bursai, Rob Herndon, and I have been approved to attend the NCEES Southern Zone Meeting in Biloxi, Mississippi on April 4th through the 6th.
It's supposed to be a beautiful place, isn't it? Biloxi.
Is it? Okay.
Are you serious?
Really?
I just want to make y'all, I want y'all to feel good.
Scottsdale, Arizona, or Biloxi, Mississippi?
Remember that last time it was Las Vegas versus St. Louis, and then San Francisco versus Huntsville.
Well,
Sorry, John.
We got a small group. Convert to landscape architecture.
Other meetings, Bill Lockwood and I are going to represent CLARB at a career day sponsored by the UT Knoxville College of Architecture and Design next Friday, February 22nd. So in connection with that, some of you are familiar with this procedure, I must ask for authorization to receive reimbursement for travel expenses associated with that trip. So
You want to make
So
something?
moved, yeah.
Make a
Second.
Second, all right, any discussion? And all in favor?
Aye.
You got it, John?
Thank you, appreciate that. And connected with that, in addition to promoting CLARB, information about the exam, certification, et cetera, we'll also provide information about licensure for the other professions. So there should be architecture students and interior design students in attendance as well as landscape architecture students. So we'll try to reach out to all of them. Also, Tennessee Tech has agreed to host the October board meeting, so we will be meeting on their campus, hosted by the College of Engineering in October. Yeah, I was sweating it. I thought they were going to turn us away, but they did agree. So, anyways, just kidding.
We put in good work.
Yes, thank you.
I don't think they still want me back on campus.
You still have some fines or fees to pay.
I'll drive through it now.
Oh, the date, I think is it the 11th? There's no calendar on the iPad, so I don't know the exact date. I think it's the 11th through the 13th or something.
That'll be
like
problematic.
The 11th is Friday.
that. Okay, so it must be the, is it the 8th?
Usually
it's the
11th, 9th, 10th, 11th.
4th, 5th,
Yeah,
and 6th.
that's it, I think.
October 4th, 5th, and 6th.
Oh, October, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's October.
No.
I don't routinely bring my calendar with me.
9th,
Guess I
10th,
should
and
just not do
11th.
that. Okay. I need to bring my desk calendar.
It's on, if you go to the library.
Oh, okay, you're right, because it's a standard. Yeah, okay, it is on there.
Yeah, it's not 10th.
If you need a tutorial.
Yeah, I forgot that it was on there, yeah. That's the board meeting schedule. I was thinking the big calendar that has the national council meetings and stuff on it.
Yeah.
Also, I was invited to attend a session on separate licensure of structural engineers at the Tennessee Structural Engineers Association State Convention on January 25th. And that organization feels that a separate license for structural engineers would better protect the public. So they had a presentation regarding that issue. They are working on potential legislation. They're at the point now where it's being reviewed by their membership, and then eventually they're going to want input from the A&E board, and I'm assuming TSPE and other interested parties. So it's possible there may be legislation next year for that.
Have they developed a list of why they feel like?
Yeah, it is, and it's on the agenda for us to discuss during the engineer committee tomorrow. I've got quite a bit of information on that I sent to you in advance of the meeting. So certainly the engineers will be discussing that more. That's just something to look forward to, I suppose, for next year. But I'm very grateful to them, and I've expressed my gratitude to them that they are asking us for input in advance. They're not just going straight to the legislature. They're doing it, I think, the correct way. Rulemaking hearing rules approved at the August meeting have been filed with the Secretary of State, and they are scheduled to take effect on March the 11th. Unfortunately, during the whole process of making some changes at the hearing and presenting them to the Secretary of State and for review within the department, a couple of minor errors were made in the rules that were filed. And these are going to have to be corrected at the next rulemaking hearing, and I can point those out to you when we go over the proposed rule changes later on the agenda. These rules are, it's not really major errors, it's just minor things that will need to be changed later. The rules are going to be reviewed by the Joint Government Operations Committee at 1:30 p.m. on Monday, February 25th. Legislative Plaza Room 30, and Hal Balthrop, Rick Thompson, Rob Herndon, and I are going to be present for that committee meeting if they have questions about any of the proposed rules. So I guess it would not hurt for you to authorize, at least for Rick, to receive travel reimbursement for attending that committee meeting. Because the department asked that we have a couple of board members present. So.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Thank you. Just to be on the safe side, because I know Rick's got to drive from Chattanooga, so may have some mileage reimbursement there.
He can stay with the state legislature. They get money for
Yeah, I'll stay with Gerald. Also, the latest issue of our newsletter was distributed electronically last month. We've got over 18,000 recipients on our distribution list now, so pretty good number. I have submitted language to change the wording in the appropriations bill to increase our grants appropriation from $200,000 to $300,000, and to make grant funds available to both state-funded and private colleges and universities.
250 to 300.
No, right now the language in the bill still says 200. The department's authorized 250.
Okay.
But it's that language didn't make it into the appropriations bill.
Did we do that illegally?
No, we had authorization for that, yeah. But anyways, it's going to increase it to $300,000 and make it available to both private and state-funded universities. And it appears we have received department approval for that. As usual, I don't have anything in writing. Usually don't for things like this. But it appears the department's okay with it. So it's been submitted to Finance and Administration, and they have the final say on it. But it appears that it's a done deal from everything I've been told. So I think that's a great accomplishment there that we've been able to get that through. But we won't know for sure until later in the legislative session. Beginning in April, I've already mentioned to many of you, all of our meetings are going to be held in new conference rooms in the other building, the Davy Crockett Tower, which is undergoing renovations. So that's where we'll be meeting for the remaining meetings this year. Yes, yeah, they're very nice. We just had a tour of them this morning before the architect committee meeting started, and they're very nice. So I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
It's on that first floor.
Right. There's another larger room on the 6th floor as well that I think we're scheduled to use it perhaps for one meeting later this year, but most of them will be on the 1st floor.
Where we used to meet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's in a slightly different location on the
It's
1st floor. It's to the left rather than the right. Yeah, but it's very nice.
They still keep the cafeteria up on the 7th floor?
I don't know about that. Yeah, I don't believe they do.
This way.
You want to open one?
Yeah. Well, anyway, yeah. And eventually our offices are supposed to move back to the other building as well. Perhaps June is the date that's been thrown out. So we'll be moving at some point, probably this year. All right, on page 36 of 166 on your iPads, you have licensing data, number of applications reviewed and approved, and you have the number of registrants on page 37. Just give you some statistical information. And beginning on page 38 is a report on all open complaints. This is a snapshot as of February the 5th, just to show you where we stand with our complaints. You'll notice, if I can get my page to turn, it ain't gonna work. There we go. 10 of these, we had 41 that were open as of the 5th of February. 10 or 24% over 180 days old, but all of those have had clock stopping action, which means that they've been authorized for a formal hearing or we're tracking compliance or something of that nature. 9 are authorized to be heard by the board, formals to be heard by the board. At this point it was 0 to be heard by an administrative law judge, but of course now all 20 of those privilege tax cases are going to be going to an ALJ. Yeah. Well, that's true, yeah. You'll send them a consent order. If they don't sign the consent order, they'll be a formal, right?
You have a question?
Just a comment. There are 3 cases, 2007, 2009, and 2009. And I know each one has specific circumstances, but I would just encourage Adrian or whoever let's try to get those cleared off of here as quick as we can, because those are, 6 or 7 years old.
Yeah, the oldest one from 2007, that one is scheduled for April. I don't think he hasn't sent the notice of hearing and charges yet. Yeah, but the plan is that one will be heard at the April meeting.
I would just encourage those 3 because they seem to be a little older than the others are 2010, 11.
Right. Yeah, and that's Adrian's top priorities to get those older.
Those are kind of pretty old.
Right.
I'll shut up.
Got a question, John, on the professional privilege tax coming up this year. I've gotten an email or two, and I think even in the design line, it implies that they're not going to notify us.
Yeah, they're not going to send notices in the mail, is my understanding.
So if somebody it's an email that doesn't say, jump out in the red. I mean, if they're like me and get 500 a day, what is this? They could easily miss it. And I know it's your responsibility to keep it up. I know all that good stuff. And there's probably a lot of people out there, or maybe there is, that don't read their email. And I just, given the situation, it almost looks like to me, all of a sudden you're gonna have a bunch that don't pay it on time. And then they get to pay a fine or whatever it is.
What's the problem after 2 years? You would probably notice if you had paid it in 2 years.
Yeah, somebody bring it to your attention.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I agree, but they don't plan any kind of notification. And it's not just us, it's doctors and speech therapists and everything else in the world.
I'm not sure if they're
Yeah, I
not going
think
to
good
do
luck
any
with that.
notification. I don't know
If you're not even gonna tell
the
them.
specifics of it.
That most of the people that do that, that don't do it by letter, do it by email. And all that. George, just give you notification by email. Frank's right though, if you don't look at your email or something that you don't recognize and you just hit delete on, oh, they do follow-ups.
Or junkie, maybe.
Yeah, it goes to junk. They'd be in trouble.
I ain't got a solution, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
That's why I diligently read every piece of email I get.
That's not true.
The only reason I read it is because I was afraid somebody might be giving me $1 million and I missed it.
Yeah. From Nairobi.
Well, we did have, I will say, the last list we got from revenue, there were a lot more on the list than usual. I'm not sure why that was, but we had a lot more than usual. I mean, you think 20 is a lot. I mean, the list was a whole lot bigger when we first sent out notices to them, and a lot of them, thankfully, the majority of them was paid, and they're in good standing now. But these 20 that were presented were not. So, but you're right; it may be more if they're not mailing notices. Could potentially be more. But we're doing great with our performance measure. Percent on time, clock stopped within 180 days. Last 18 months is 97-something%. So we're doing great there. And then beginning on page 40, you have information by fiscal year on our complaints, just cases open, closed, etc. And beginning on page 41, we have the preliminary financial report for the second quarter of this current fiscal year, which I can present to you. I think actually Rick is the treasurer because he's secretary, but I'll present it to you. So that's all right.
I'll turn that over to you, John.
Okay, I thought you might want, I thought you might. Basically, in sum, revenues up, expenditures are down, and you have the detail there. If you have any questions, I sent it to you in advance, so hopefully you've already reviewed it. I think we're doing good there. And you do have the detail if you want to drill down. And you've got your colorful pie and graph charts there to show you where we stand. I'll spend a little more time talking about our 5-year budget projection. That begins on page 52. This is, y'all had asked me, I think, at the retreat to work on this. And it looks like, well, first of all, I'll just kind of go through some of the assumptions here. You'll notice that under revenue, for the assumptions there, I assumed based on past trends, and I try to be conservative with my assumptions, about a 2% per year increase in the number of registrants, with the one exception, sorry, Susan, interior designers, estimated a 5% per year decrease for them.
Well, no, don't make it that bad.
Yeah, that's kind of the trend. But for the other professions, 2%, so certainly a net increase there. Also assumed, well, you'll notice the total revenue for fiscal year 14, that'll be from July 1st, 2013 through June 30th, 2014. That's our state fiscal year. The revenue's a little higher than it is for fiscal year 2015, quite a bit higher actually. That's because of the upcoming changes in the way we're collecting engineering exam fees. That is, starting in 2014, January 2014, we're no longer collecting exam fees. That's what we anticipate, nor will we be collecting, nor will we have the expenditures. We're not going to be expending money for the exams either, because they're going to be computer-based, and that's going to be collected even for the PE exams. That will be collected by NCEES rather than by us. So you're going to see a corresponding fiscal year 2015. That's why you see that decrease in revenue, but you also see a corresponding decrease in expenditures, because we're no longer collecting or for the engineering exams or spending the money for them. So, anyways, further assumptions. We assume, based on the cost of processing an FE application, and we'll discuss this further in the engineer committee tomorrow, that the cost for an FE application could perhaps be lowered. Right now it's $50, and we just basically spend all of that on the exams. It goes to NCEES. We could probably lower that to $10 based on what it cost us to process those applications. So I assumed a $10 fee for the FE applications. I also assumed a decrease in candidate volume, which is anticipated by NCEES because of the conversion to computer-based testing. Expenditures, estimated some modest increases in those. Under computer-related equipment, it's higher in fiscal year 2016 because usually about every 4 years we update our computers in the office. So I budgeted it for that year. I assumed a grant allocation of $300,000 because it appears that's going to happen. So that's what I assumed for our purposes here. And also assumed a 2% per year increase in the state regulatory fee. That's that $5 per head charge for active registrants. And department costbacks, I assumed an increase there as well, corresponding to the increase in the number of registrants. And I contacted some of the Reg Board's administration staff about whether the assessment of the regulatory fee or costbacks would change in the coming years, because, as you will recall, I think in October we discussed it, an audit of some of the Reg Boards challenged the way those fees were being assessed and those costbacks were assessed. But I haven't heard that they're going to be changing, so I just assumed that they're going to continue to be assessed as they have in the past, which may be an incorrect assumption, but based on the information I have now, it's the best I could estimate on that. So the bottom line is, it looks like when the engineering exams are converted to computer-based testing, it looks like even taking that into account, we're still going to have a substantial surplus each year, even with the grants increasing to $300,000. It doesn't appear that we need to be concerned about deficits in the near future.
Quick question. Are we limited or restricted on what we can do with that accumulated reserve? Are we required statutorily to have a certain amount in that reserve?
No, we're not.
Are we limited on what we can do with it?
Yeah, we really can't spend it. We can't spend it without running a deficit.
Without what?
We have to be running a deficit to need to dip into it. So you can't just say we can't say we want to spend $50,000 out of our reserve on a particular activity.
But the state,
because we can't dip into it directly.
They can take that reserve or some part of that reserve anytime they want to.
Yeah, they could. Yeah. And they have, at least a couple
I guess
times.
my question is, for example, if we wanted to put a one-time increase in addition to the $300,000, if we said, let's have a one-time 1 year $500,000 allocation to the universities doesn't necessarily imply that we're going to go in the red. We just dip into the reserves to make ourselves whole and have a net zero balance for the year, income versus revenue. Who would we have to get permission from to do that?
Ultimately, finance and administration would have to approve that.
Actually, I think the legislature approves of that.
Well, yeah.
Based on the recommendations from
But,
FNA.
yeah, it's prepared by FNA, right.
Okay.
Is it advisable to do something like that? I mean, could we raise eyebrows or draw unnecessary attention to ourselves by doing something like that?
Well, I mean, we've increased the grants appropriations significantly. I mean, it started out $175,000 in 2002. In 2008, we increased it to $200,000. Last year, we increased it to $250,000. Now we've increased it to $300,000.
I think that's where the surplus, something good came out then.
I agree.
Yeah.
But we continue to have
Raise
surplus
some
and we continue to increase the reserve. And I would.
It's increasing at a slower rate than it used to. We used to put a lot more into reserves than we do now because of the increase in the grants primarily. But yeah, it's still a surplus. But there's still a lot of assumptions here. So
Most of them conservative assumptions.
yeah.
Okay.
And if cost facts change significantly, the way those are assessed, that could have a big impact, as could the state regulatory fee. Let's say if they say we need to be charged $10 a year instead of $5 a year, I don't anticipate that, but if that occurred, that would eat into this, 104,000 to 176,000 surplus pretty quick. It's a surplus, but it's not a huge surplus. Just a slight increase in cost backs and the regulatory fee could take a big chunk out of that, certainly.
But the risk of becoming like NCAAS.
It's slim.
Huh?
It's going to be slim for us, I think. Not going to change.
Well, I think it's slim that we're going to change NCAAS to
Yeah, it's true.
get access to that reserve fund. I mean, it would be, if we've generated that revenue from professional fees and taxes, it'd be nice to apply it towards the profession instead of just letting it go back to the general fund, which ultimately it will.
Well, that may be something that we need to, if it's going to get taken at some point in time, which I think that's not a terrible assumption. I wish there was some ability to have some input on where it got sent to rather than just go straight to the general fund. And I think that may be what you're trying to say too, Alton, is that, if we got $1 million out there in our reserve and they're going to come and take 700,000 of it, at least maybe get some input on how it would help if it's going to defray something, help something that we hold near and dear to our heart, because that's kind of what we've tried to do with the grants. Buying equipment for a college or whatever the situation may be, I would prefer that it go to something that our profession would support rather than just some ad hoc.
That's why I'd rather us go ahead and take the initiative and try to go ahead and acquire some of that reserves and allocation of what we want. Go ahead and do it now. Us assign the value to it, rather than have it retracted from us into the general fund and probably realistically lose any input into how it's allocated.
Why don't we let the finance committee study that problem?
Great.
I think you should bring it up, yeah, Howard. At least.
Yeah, no, that's something I mentioned to you before. The administration would like to see fee reductions. Obviously, with the way this budget is prepared, with the surplus that we have, we couldn't really do a significant fee reduction.
That's $5 a register.
Yeah, it wouldn't be much, right? If we take the grants out, we could.
that could be substantial.
How do our fees compare to the other professions? I know privilege tax.
Yeah, I've done some
I
comparisons.
thought you had, but do you recall?
Not factored in the privilege tax,
Right,
though, but
right.
yeah, it's largely consistent.
Yeah.
Are they?
With, yeah, other states and other professions.
Why don't we do away with the privilege tax then?
Yeah, because this,
If the state wants to cut some.
this legislative body's not for taxes. I would think it would be seriously a good time to consider that.
Revenue. Go ahead.
There's
Candice,
a
you got a hand
surplus in
up?
revenue this year.
I think Candice wants to interject something.
There has been legislation introduced to reduce the privilege tax by 10% over 10 years.
So 1% a year.
No,
10% a year, and 10 years it would be gone. No, it would
Now, the question
mathematically,
is whether
it wouldn't be
it's going
gone.
to pass.
Yeah.
Because the actual privilege tax was 77 million last fiscal year.
So they do that, and then they eliminate TennCare, and then, oh, never mind. They can't pay for anything. They get
Okay,
rid of
John.
everything.
Is it all done? We done with your budget?
Yeah, unless y'all have any more questions about that. Questions? So the Finance Committee will further study that. All right. Legislative update begins on page 55, and these are just a few of the bills that I've been watching and the professional societies have been watching as well. And you've got the summary there on the spreadsheet. You also have the actual bills behind there. The first one, Senate Bill 148, House Bill 142. This is Department administration legislation that amends our law in preparation for the computerization of the engineering exams by taking out the minimum 8-hour written language about I think the board administering or conducting the exams. That language is being removed from our statute. So we're very overjoyed, in fact, that did get introduced.
Do you want to go one at a time to tell you what our position is?
Sure. Oh, I should point out, too, for the other professions other than engineering, that we received a memo from NCEES, I think last month, telling us that the FE, the fundamentals exam, is being reduced from 8 hours to 6 hours. So that's why this legislation is so critical. Right now the law says you have to pass a minimum 8-hour exam to become an engineer intern. Well, the exam's no longer going to be 8 hours as of January 2014. So that's why we had to have that taken out, because now it's going to be 6 hours.
Can I hear a motion that we support this? Make a motion that we support what position I'm going to take and based on, and give me a reasoning why we support this.
I hope you don't oppose that bill.
I'll make a motion that we support Senate Bill 148, House Bill 142, which amends the law for computerized exams so that it meets our current testing criteria.
Okay.
Second that.
All right. Motion second.
Well,
Second.
Or
It started, it was
Proposed
effective
testing
in January of 13, right?
2014.
2014.
Yeah, 2014,
sorry.
yeah.
Future.
Pending.
Right.
Pending. Okay.
Out of
Opposed. I'm just, the
You want to
language.
restate your
No,
motion?
because I
Just the
can't
last
remember.
part, don't do the first part.
Pending.
Okay. Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All right, so we are for it. Say, everybody agrees to it. Say aye.
Aye.
Motion carry for you in opposition. Next.
All right, Senate Bill 149, House Bill 143. This would prohibit renewal of a license unless civil penalties have been paid and authorizes implementation of an electronic system for submitting complaints and applications. I think this is a department bill as well.
It's a good one.
As far as I know it is. I don't know why it wouldn't be, but it sounds like something you would have proposed. Yeah. I hadn't heard about it before, but I found it when I was doing some searches. But anyways,
Okay.
I mean,
I thought we already had electronic submission complaint.
yeah, we do actually for complaints. You can submit
But
one
this is talking about
online.
renewal, yeah.
Applications we don't yet. That's why I think this is department legislation, because we're working on a new licensing system. I think I mentioned it to you before, to replace RBS, the system that we currently use. And supposedly, one of the features of this system is it will allow for online applications.
I would move that this board support this legislation.
Second the motion.
Okay, we're going to motion and a second. Any discussion? So we support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Senate Bill 281, House Bill 92. This is one that Candy made reference to. It would exempt local governments from minimum statewide building construction safety standards.
To make a motion that we oppose this bill.
A second.
Okay, any discussion? We need to write, to tell you why we oppose it, or you okay with it?
I make a motion that we oppose this bill because it does not take into consideration the health, safety, and welfare of the general public as prescribed by the state of Tennessee.
It's a good way to put it. Susan, would you second?
Yes, it lowers that threshold.
That's
exactly right.
So we got a motion and proposed. I think that will help John craft anything so you all can be consistent. All right, hearing none discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carried. John, next.
Senate Bill 368, House Bill 827 requires department boards to adopt and implement rules and regulations to create conflict of interest policies for board members.
That's a good bill.
I mean, we already have a conflict of interest policy, and actually it's on the agenda later. I've got one for you to sign while you're here.
John, do you know whether or not the administration is opposing any of these or opposing any of these?
Yeah, not to my knowledge.
You don't think they care then one way or the other?
Usually, most of the time they defer to the will of the legislature. I anticipate that would be
I
their.
thought the administration had a package of legislation that they...
I'm not privy to most of that, so.
So they don't notify boards and things when
They don't.
want something done?
No. Generally not. The only one I had a hand in was the first one about the computerization of the engineering exams.
Okay.
And you don't have to take positions on these. I mean, it's up to you.
Well, in reading this, it sounds like it's consistent with existing.
Right.
So I wonder what the gap is or difference is. Maybe we should ask for clarification if there's something we're missing or something. Maybe not take a position on this because it's not clear that it's necessary, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. We already have the mechanism in place.
Well, there's some boards, though, that might not, other boards.
It appears that way, the way
Yeah.
I read it.
The only comment I would make is with these kinds of things, and I have to sign one for working with local government, I don't think it's a bad thing by nature or by content necessarily, but it does, I think, feed a public perception that perhaps people in public positions are not trustworthy, and it contributes to that cynicism. That's my only concern from I mean, if you have to sign a statement that you're going to be ethical, then
you really don't have it.
Right. So anyway, just a comment.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm
Well,
okay.
this is more about conflict of interest rather than being ethical. I
True.
don't think this requires us to take any position. We'll
Agree.
do whatever
Agree.
we have to do for conflict
we've
of
already-
interest.
we already have
Right,
all
we
the
already
rules.
signed all of that.
Okay, John, we'll move on.
Okay, let me, do we have to still say we vote to make no position, or we can just say no position? Because I agree with you. I mean, I don't think we need.
we have.
Do we have to take a stand?
I don't.
No, you don't.
No, we don't have
Move
to.
on
No
down
action
the
I'm
list.
just reporting.
No.
Okay, I didn't know.
All right, thank you. Next.
I was going to come up with something semi-screwed up.
Senate Bill 492, House Bill 350 is updating the electrical safety code. That's one that Candy sent me, but I don't know if that's actually one of concern or not.
No, that's just,
It's just updating the safety.
Yeah, that's a good thing,
electrical
yeah.
safety code. Okay.
Does it include Marines?
As a matter of fact, just as a side note, the 2013 is coming out already, so the way I always understood it, that we are always one cycle behind, so.
Yeah.
It's a good thing to get them updated to as close as possible to the latest version.
And Senate Bill 493, House Bill 422.
I make a motion that we support the upgrade of the electric safety code from 2006 version to 2011.
Okay. Do I have a
Second.
second?
what you
And,
want.
yeah. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, sir. Go on.
Okay, House Bill 422, Senate Bill 493, requires expedited issuance of licenses for veterans and their spouses. It also waives renewal requirements for those on active duty. For us, that would include not only continuing education, we already have a provision that would exempt those on active duty from continuing ed. It also waives renewal fees for them. And it would grant certain experience education credit for service members as well if it's substantially equivalent to the requirements we already have in place. And this is similar to legislation that's being introduced all over the country. I think it's an Obama administration initiative to support veterans.
Are they required to renew as soon as they come off of active duty, though?
Yeah, once they return to active duty,
Or from active
they're no
duty?
longer, right, they're no longer exempt.
Right.
I don't know if we would have to adopt rules to implement this, or if maybe the division would adopt rules. I'm not sure how that would work.
Well, I speak from experience, when son number one came off of active duty from his first deployment to Iraq, there's a certain amount of time, so I would think that we might want to have something in our statute that addresses that, give them a grace period.
But there'd have to be some notification that we receive as a board, I guess, as a licensing board, give us notification that they're off active duty, therefore, if they're, like Steve said, they're buried in.
That's what John's.
How do we do that?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't answer that question.
that's, because, the only one that would know would be the registrant himself,
Yeah.
he or she.
What would you interpret expediting to mean as opposed to them normally?
We had legislation a couple of years ago that passed for military spouses that required an expedited process, and our expedited process is basically just to hurry up processing it. We don't really
On the top
have,
of the pile or
yeah,
something.
exactly. We don't really have an expedited process. I'm not sure how we could accomplish that.
My
other than
opinion
just
is-
processing it more quickly.
My opinion is that I think we have very few cases of any
Yeah,
violation.
nobody's applied under that provision
Right.
for military spouses.
So far,
It
we've
may
been
be
good.
very few that would apply for this, but
If we don't have a clear understanding of how all this works, I'd just suggest we take no position.
I agree.
Take a
Yeah.
pass on it.
Let's pass on. Are y'all okay with that? Okay. Next, John.
And Senate Bill 1136, House Bill 876. This is another one that Kennedy made reference to about building standards and fire safety inspections in local jurisdictions.
Okay. Hear a
Kennedy
motion
expressed
with
concern about
our
that.
position. Then we'll talk about it. And give me a reason.
Let me ask,
Go on.
Steve's involved in this somewhat. I mean, I know City of Knoxville's doing stormwater and you're taking, are they pushing this more for local jurisdictions to take certain things that the state was doing? I know we're talking about storm, yeah, but I know, are they doing it kind of across the board with state things? Have you heard or seen or anything? I mean, to me, it seems like a pretty decent deal as long as the people that you have within your local government are competent and capable, which, I mean, they are. Which, I mean, you got the same certifications in the codes department that the fire marshal has and all that. So I don't know why it's not a. I would rather, if I was person submitting for fire marshal approval, to be able to go to downtown to the city of Knoxville and talk to the person that's going to be approving that, rather than having to try to have a phone conversation or have to come up to Nashville to talk to the fire marshal people to approve. Now, that's Robert's world.
Well, Robert, on the last part of that statement is that with certain jurisdictions that have been approved by the state fire marshal to enforce code inspections.
Right, so they would be qualified. I mean,
Yeah, once fire marshal's office says you're okay, then.
Signed off.
Yeah.
I mean, I would think that would be a good thing, the closer you can get to what the actual
Rather than having them come down
application.
to coming to downtown Nashville, on to downtown Knoxville or downtown Hohenwald or wherever.
Question about what I'm reading there. There's a, it says for buildings less than 3 stories in height, but there's nothing there about a square footage restriction or limit. So, I mean, does that mean it could be 100,000 square foot 2-story building?
Or one of those giant warehouses or industrial facilities.
Yeah.
I know Jack Daniels is building quite a few new
But Jack
barrel
Daniels,
house.
But Jack Daniels wouldn't be in one of the 3 probably main.
No, they would be. I guess Moore County, Lynchburg, Moore County has a building department. I don't know. I've never had to deal with them. But I know that they're
I
building.
bet it's real sophisticated.
Yeah, you just go down to the square.
Well, you might think about, I mean, and maybe everybody knows more about this than I do, but you might think about that the board's position could be the law needs to be carefully studied and maybe amended for exactly, maybe define more what kind of buildings would revert to local.
It would be interesting to know which entities in the state have that designated approval.
I agree.
Now, remember, this says they in excess of 300,000 population, so you're not talking about 5 jurisdictions.
That's the big,
The big bill.
that's the whole bill.
There's only about 5.
There's only, I think,
He's only applied to the small one.
if you count the SMSAs, I guess there's only Nashville and Memphis are the only actual 2 cities
I'll
that
bet
are.
Chattanooga fits in there too, because this is.
Yeah, that says Knoxville.
Yeah, I think
If you consider an SMSA area, that's probably true. That's that county and all the counties surrounding it.
But not the city.
Not the city.
But the county, I'm thinking about Washington County too. Washington County may have one too.
Well, but see, they've got their own SMSA up there where you got Johnson City, Kingsport, Bristol, all one. They may be looking at just the SMSA.
See, to me, this is another one, if you don't have a clear understanding of the pros and cons of why this legislation was submitted, then it's hard to know whether you're taking the correct stand or not. You're better off to not take any stand.
I think
Here's
we ought to acquire that knowledge.
Well, then we need a lobbyist to help us.
There she is.
Well, okay, Candy.
Here's the thing I would say. I would say that we, at this time, see nothing as long as, how am I going to say that? We see, we don't take a position as long as the people being asked to review plans are qualified and meet the same criteria of the state. I mean, that's really all we're concerned with. That they're qualified and they meet the state criteria. The other stuff is, I don't think is a big deal to us.
Well, they do mention assembly in there, and which would include churches. Now I can say, because I've gone through this with the fire marshal's office, the way Tullahoma works, the building department, if this, I did it an addition for a local church. It was the congregational size. They were just needing a larger worship facility, but their congregation was under 300. But the local building department needed a letter from the fire marshal stating that it would not require their review because it was under that, and the fire marshal's office presents that. So if it's under 300 for congregation, that could be done locally. Now, once it gets 300 and more, then it has to go to the fire marshal's office. That's one way to clarify it, but it would be good to know exactly what they're
See, I think
talking
your
about. That way-
lobbyists, whether it's the engineers, the architects, whoever, I think they're the ones that need to come and explain all these pieces of legislation to us if they want the board to take a position on it. I don't know what they.
You kind of spoke to that earlier.
This bill,
Have y'all taken a position, Candy?
We're going to talk about it Friday.
Well, then,
this bill says, regardless of size.
Yeah, it's like,
So that, I mean, let me ask this question. Why would the state of Tennessee be better equipped to review that than Knox County or Hamilton County or any other county that has a sophisticated building inspection department? You know, you have to submit certain things to the state fire marshal's office because it's the state law. And for those of you who submit things to the state fire marshal's office, you understand why if you can get it reviewed at home, it'd be a whole lot easier and a whole lot quicker.
yeah, I agree. Sounds right.
As long as they
I'm
have-
sorry, I mean, if the state wants to say we have to see something over 300 assembly, then they need to state that, and it needs to be clarified. But if not, this is gonna let Hamilton County review our schools, our churches, and everything else that we need reviewed. And so, for all of you as well.
Agree. I mean, I think the legislation's positive, but I also agree with Wilson, we don't know the 100%.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It's about
Is
it.
it 300? Is it 299? I don't, it doesn't say. It does now. But
Yeah, right now it is treated.
I'm a little confused about why they need it. I mean,
Well, they're trying
like
to.
in Shelby County, there are only certain kind of buildings that go. When you have an exempt building code authority, there are only certain kind of buildings that go to the state for their review. Just educational and state-owned buildings and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So if you've got a warehouse in Shelby County that fits this, it's not going to the state anyway.
No.
What is this for? What is the law going to cover?
Here's what's
What
happening.
is it?
What are they getting at?
Yeah, I don't understand. Does this mean that a state-owned building no longer has to go to the state?
Here's the way I'm reading this, and maybe I'm reading it wrong. It says places all responsibility for building standards. Well, that means they're giving them the option of doing less than what the state required. You know, the IBC
Well, that- yeah, that's
2006 or
true.
whatever they could go. We're doing the Shelby County version, or however you want to say that.
Well, each
I mean, that's the part I would be concerned
each
about.
municipality does not necessarily have or have not adopted what the state has adopted in terms of the
Right,
IBC.
yeah.
So they're working 2 years behind the state typically. Unless, and then we just converted, Chattanooga just did, to what the state, whatever the current code is. I don't know. But a lot of municipalities haven't done that yet.
Well, it'd be
So
easy.
they're working under a separate governance anyway.
More directly, I would guess that the Shelby County bunch would try to lessen their seismic requirements.
Well, that's
You
what
know,
I was
just
gonna
throwing that
say.
out
You could recommend this as long as whatever those local jurisdictions regulations are at least as stringent as the state's.
But they're not currently, is my point.
No, they're behind right now. At least
They're
for
all
the cul-de-sac,
behind.
they're behind.
Then
yes.
they'd have to get that way in order to have this approval authority.
Right.
So like that, I was helping out a client, and this is just for renovating a residence, and it was down in Jasper. And although Jasper has building department, the building department really is the county. It's Jasper and Marion County. So unless the local county officials have adopted the minimum what the fire marshal is, you could have a difference how the building and the gentleman in the building department, he was a little smarter than I would say I expected him, and not being derogatory, because he was referring to, well, it needs to, you need to be abiding by the International Residential Building Code. So, you know, you could run into the situation, and maybe Rick and Frank, you have, where a local, when you're dealing with smaller communities, whoever's overseeing the building department, they may or may not be aware of what current codes are.
Well, this only refers to municipalities that are over 300,000 people, so
Yeah.
we're narrowing it down to about 4 or 5 places, jurisdictions that are exempt.
I agree with you, though, that this language is really troublesome when they just say that they're turning over the standards, that kind of language, to the local jurisdiction. That seems to me to accomplish what that other bill that we opposed was trying to accomplish.
Oh, yeah.
John, is a board position considered a formal action that requires physical presence to vote on or make? The reason I ask, if TSB and ACEC are meeting Friday, if Candy's in a position to release at least that organization's or those organizations' recommendations for the board consideration, and maybe AIA as well at some point, could we take it under advisement? Because Speaker Harwell indicated they're on an accelerated schedule, and we meet again in April, right? So I don't know that there'd be time if we wanted to form a position, and I agree with Wilson that we probably need to be clear on what the representative organization's positions are before we take a position. Or it would be helpful to, I guess I should say. So.
Well, and if they take a position, I don't know that we're adding a whole lot to the deal.
Sure, we
because
have a
they're
lot
the
of
lo-
clouds.
they're the lobbying people. They're the ones that live over there.
But they lobby on really.
Because I guarantee you, Norris and McCormick didn't write this legislation, or no. Somebody has
Put it together.
the contractors, the engineers, the architects, the developers, the realtors. Somebody has gone to the municipalities and said, "This is what we want you to do," and we don't even know who that is. So.
If we wanted to take a position, could we do it by email?
Okay.
We'd have to have an open meeting, which we'd have to either schedule a physical meeting or
It'd be hard to beat the
teleconference.
I
But
was gonna
teleconference,
say.
we have to justify.
We might as well approve it.
I just, if the handwriting's on the wall on this one.
I just leave it on neutral.
Just leave it a neutral.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, let me just, I'll give this as guidance then to, maybe guidance. Our position is, as long as the people reviewing the plans have been approved by the state fire marshal and are competent and capable based on their criteria, and it doesn't impact the health, safety, and welfare of the public by reducing the standard, then this board would, would give that guidance to whoever's going to do that. I mean, that doesn't have to be a motion. That doesn't have to be a motion, but because they're going to be having a phone call on Friday, and that would be our deal, is that as long as the people reviewing it are capable and competent and approved by the state fire marshal, and the standards are not a reduced standard.
Rick's already told us this thing's passed, so.
Well,
we're
but you can
like
still
Don
work.
Quixote fighting a windmill.
But you can still tweak a little bit of some of those languages, even though the stuff that's passed, you can have some ability to tweak it. Because a lot of times when they write that, they write it in a pretty generic sense, and they don't have every little thing, and sometimes those things are pointed out. So I mean, I agree that I don't think that's the purpose. I think the purpose is to speed the process up. Don't you, Rick?
Yes.
I think that's the purpose.
Okay.
Well, in here, I'm looking at the bill itself, and there's no reference, as it states on that summary sheet, about what's that about being approved by or recognized by fire marshal's office. So in the bill itself, I do not see that reference that entity has been
There's,
approved.
look at,
I'm somehow missing it.
let's see. Applies for and has received approval from the state fire marshal to enforce its
Okay,
own
yeah,
code.
I see it, right, yeah. Here it is, yeah. I just missed it.
Okay, so I think we're just gonna,
That was just some guidance I would give
John?
the lobbyist community is
Yeah.
that that's.
As long as fire
seems to be-
marshal's office is
Nobody else is.
okay with it.
Okay.
to that.
yeah, I think we're
So
good.
we're not taking a.
No, we're not
position.
taking any action. All right, let's move on, John. Are you done with yours?
Yeah, that's it for the director's report. So-
Okay, next we have the architect.
Sorry, one thing. I've been invited to speak at Tennessee Tech on March 27th. Does this board need to approve that?
Yes.
Okay.
For
I've
travel
been invited
How,
Tennessee Tech for the engineering.
I thought you were alumni, they ought to be a drive for free.
I'm a civil servant.
Okay, Hal has to go speak to
I'll
the,
move to approve Hal
Travel.
going to speak to travel.
did I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I didn't even ask for discussion, I just went right straight.
What was the date?
March 27th.
March
March
27th.
27th, okay.
Okay, we have the architects committee report from Mr. Rick Thompson.
We met this morning. We had 3 items. It's on your board meeting agenda. The first item is something that we did internally, which was applications, audits, et cetera. But those have been taken care of, and hopefully you've got them. So, second item was proposed continuing education rules for architects. We discussed this, and we are in agreement that we would like to accept, what was it, number 1, John?
Yeah, the first option that
What page is that on?
gives architects 2 options. Let's see. Let's see. It's on page 9 of 166.
9, okay. I was way off. Oh, wait a minute, this page 9.
Yeah, page 7 at the bottom.
Okay. Yeah, option 1, with the inclusion of interior designers as well, right? Where it says for architects, registered architects, first sentence, item 1, registered architects and interior designers may meet the continuing education requirements by attaining 12 CEUs, which will be HSW CEUs.
Every calendar year.
Every calendar year.
They could either do that or comply with the current requirements.
Depending
It's an
on
option.
where they are in terms of how their license is
Right.
renewing. So we're going to have the option. So if you want to go for the 12 on a 12-month basis, and that puts you in line with NCARB, so you're not constantly struggling to get your other state licenses. It's a simpler thing for us. And then, but the other architects may not be practicing on a national basis, and if they want to continue to do it that way, eventually I see that being rolled out. But currently, baby steps. So that's what we've agreed on and what we're recommending. And then another item was the requirement for the construction administration. Where is that, John?
Oh, that's right behind the proposed rules.
Oh, that's, yeah.
Say 15,
Yeah, 15 of 166, this was a request from Vance Travis in Chattanooga, former board member. Vance has, Connie and Candy both have extensive involvement in this previously, and this met with a lot of resistance from legislators as another regulation. But we have a volunteer here that's going to do it look like a straw poll and talk to some of the legislators to see if Frank's volunteered to do that, to see if see what the temperature on that might be before we engage in trying to do that again. Because there are certain instances where we are requested to do minimal CA, and there are instances where we do the full package. And that all depends on the type of project. If it's a developer, what does that mean? Typically, we have to do some. Our insurance carrier insists on that, which would be a monthly site visit minimum. Other times it's weekly and very complicated, as we all know. So anyway, our position on this as architects is that we're going to look into it and see what kind of resistance might be out there.
Let me ask a question. On state projects,
We're required.
you're required to do it.
Yeah, this is not just, this is individual projects.
I mean, that was my feeling that most state projects and federal projects have a requirement.
I don't have a state project or a healthcare project or an education project or an assembly project or any of those types of projects that don't require you to have that.
You know, TDOT requires somebody different.
Now, if I'm doing a Ross dress for less, I may not have a whole lot of CA on that.
Right.
Right.
Or a small building or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's not.
Developers out doing a 10,000 square foot little office building, he may not necessarily.
I may have
think
to
he
I may
needs
have
to.
to review the pay request and
You'll
what's
You'll negotiate some.
minimal stuff. Yeah, and you negotiate your scope and your salary, your fee.
Yeah.
That's part of it. That's why we're not rushing into this because we don't know. Again, what the temperature of the legislature would be trying to force this down everyone's throat.
Well, it's not asking us to define the scope. Right?
Yeah.
If you read the
Administration is pretty.
yeah, and they've included.
It's pretty extensive.
Yeah, it's very extensive, and if you look at the attachment to this, it's the state of Alabama, what they have done, and they actually had it approved. It's a rule, not a law, as far as I can tell, from Alabama. Is that right, John? It's a rule. So, kind of like the rule we're pressing out there now for but it does support the law that we're not allowed to. We should be selection based on qualification based on selection processes and not based on fees. But we don't have anything to tie this to. So that's where we are.
Okay. Anything else for architecture?
Your general consensus is you're in favor of CA during construction, just maybe not full scale.
That's my opinion.
And as Rick,
Go ahead.
as Rick says, it's based on, during what part of it is what the client wants. Some clients will want you to be there, have the full package. Others, like I say, it might be 10,000 square foot little commercial space that, they don't need it. And the architect's agreement, in your contract, you have that spelled out.
Okay.
That's my report.
Thank
Or
you.
our report. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next thing, just kind of let the board know we got 1 hour to 5 o'clock. So I think we should be able to finish before 5 if we keep moving. So unfinished business is under your column right now, John.
Yes, action items is on page 80 on your iPads, 80 of 166. Under my name, determine cost of processing engineer intern application, went over that with the 5-year budget projection, estimate probably about $10, actually $8 and something, but rounded that up to about $10. We did write newsletter articles about student loans, child support. We're actually listing those in the newsletter now, those that are on suspension because of not paying their student loans or child support, and also about the need to notify us of address changes. You do have the 5-year budget projections, did increase or request the grants appropriation increase, and that seems to be moving along well. Haven't really gotten any information about the regulatory fee or cost bag, so maybe learn more about that later perhaps. And I have prepared contracts to distribute grant funds to the state universities, so those are currently in process. We're hoping that they will be approved by March the 1st. That's the anticipated start date for the contract. So the schools will, usually they get their money in April, May, in that time frame. We have not yet researched amending TCA 622201 about the terms for expired, not expired board members, but the expiration of their terms of office. Yes,
Not your life.
Their expiration,
not your life.
But anyway, we haven't researched that yet. It's just not a top priority. So it's kind of one of those things. Well, if it ain't broke, do we need to fix it? The rulemaking hearing notice, we haven't started that yet because we're still discussing some of the potential rule changes for our next hearing. And we did research if grant funds can be provided to private institutions, and so far everybody's said, well, why not? Why weren't you doing that from the beginnings, the response that we received? So apparently there's no prohibition on that I can determine. Rick has not yet written his article.
The article y'all volunteered me for?
Yes. And I did send you something on that. It's an email.
Would you resend that to me, please?
Yeah, it may have ended up in this box with your email from Revenue. That's your privilege tag. So.
No, I mean the one where I have two accounts?
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
Get a nasty letter if you don't pay both of them.
Yes. And we do have a revised PDH form later on the agenda for you to review. And hopefully you've all done the rest of those items. If not, you can admit to it now.
We'll do it tonight.
Well, I'll admit to something. I think, is it on there? No, that's the next thing. That's publication. You're not publications yet, are you?
No, I mean, we're progressing on that, though, on the publications.
Well,
that's later on the agenda,
okay,
too.
it's later, good. We
Talk about that later. Yeah. So that's about it for the action items, I think.
The engineer committee, we're meeting tomorrow, so we'll consider the 2 items that we'll talk about.
Right.
Next, if you all don't have any questions for John, next is how Bartrup has presented some kind of, take it from here, some kind of form for tracking our continuing.
Mr. Chair, before that, we had proposed rule changes on the agenda.
Did I miss them?
You skipped over that one, under action items.
Yeah, you want to go over that then? Sorry about
That's
that.
fine. And that's actually towards the beginning. It's right behind the agenda because that was the first thing the architects discussed when they met today. So it starts on page 3 on the iPads, 3 of 166. As Mr. Lynn mentioned, the engineers are going to discuss future rule changes that are needed for the computerization of the exams tomorrow. And these are just changes that y'all agreed to when we met in October. I think all of those are listed here. Deleting the portion of the rules about master's degrees from the engineering rules because that provision in the law has now expired.
Right.
And also deleting the part about programs that are taught strictly by distance education or correspondence, striking that from the engineer's education rule because ABET now accredits some programs that are entirely online. So that seems to be a trend that's growing. So y'all had agreed in October to delete that portion of that rule. The architects are progressing on their CE rule amendments. Landscape architects, we were deleting the part about application deadlines since their exams computerized. Also repealing the fee for transfer of exam grades for the architect and landscape architect exams because it really doesn't cost us anything significant to do that. I'm not sure where they got that $20 fee from. Then another one that may need more discussion is about repealing the residency requirements rule for exam applicants. At this point, if you want to sit for an exam in Tennessee, you have to either live or work here, basically. And this would repeal that. We're one of just a handful of states that have a residency requirement. At the meeting in Atlanta, remember there was a raise of hands. All the states that require residency, and we were like one of maybe 5 or 6, I think, that raised our hands. So that's not a very common requirement. And with CBT, where people can just sit anywhere, I don't know that it's really relevant anymore.
Well, it's not, and that's specifically to sit for the exam, not to practice on
Yeah,
this.
just to take the test. Like comedy, of course, they can be from anywhere. Number 8 in that list, under architects, engineers, landscape architects, this would this is a change that is going to be necessary because of what I mentioned earlier in my director's report. When we filed the rules with the Secretary of State, there were some errors in it, and one of those errors is here under number 8. We added some language at the beginning of paragraph 5 of the seals rule that really should be placed in a slightly different format later in that particular rule. It was just inserted in the wrong place. And also some language that was added during the course of the hearing was omitted, and that's underlined here, that they have to, in circumstances where they're making changes to plans that were prepared by another registrant, the successor registrant has to take all steps necessary to ensure that the drawings were prepared under his or her responsible charge before sealing them. That language was omitted when they were filed. And also the part in the next sentence about documenting and sealing changes on the original sheets, that was omitted as well. Right now it just says that they have to prepare and seal addenda sheets, and sometimes, especially if it's minor changes, you might just mark the changes on the original plans itself rather than do an addenda sheet. So those will be added in our next hearing. And then number 9 there is that except as provided by language that was inserted in the wrong place earlier. That's where it's supposed to go. Number 10 is a change to conform to some recent amendment to NCARB's model regulations. Then we got the address change rule, number 11. And we did add, I think Susan, I believe, requested that we add phone number to that, I believe. And calendar was added as well, within 30 calendar days. And then the other 2 were really just housekeeping changes, 12 and 13 there. And 14 just adds the address change rule to the interior designer rules. That rule actually doesn't exist for interior designers yet.
Really?
Over the years, we've kind of forgotten the fact that chapters 1 and 2 of the rules do not apply to interior designers. Interior designers have their own chapter, chapter 4. So if we want to require anything for interior designers, that change has to be in chapter 4. But we've forgotten that over the years, and we've made changes for architects, engineers, and landscape architects, and we've forgotten to make them for interior designers.
We didn't even have civil penalties.
Yeah, all right, we didn't have civil penalties for interior
Because
designers.
it wasn't in chapter
It's like, anyway, I think we've got it straight now. We're trying to correct all that. And then it just makes some similar, 15 is a similar change that we made for the other professions. And then 16 and 17 is making the reference requirements for interior designers consistent with the requirements for architects, engineers, and landscape architects. And that's it. Then behind there you have the engineer application rules that will require amendment in preparation for computer-based testing. That will be discussed tomorrow. And then, as Rick already mentioned, the architects and Susan as well are supportive of option 1 for the continuing education rules. So that's where we stand right now.
Yeah, form.
So I'm not sure when we'll be able to schedule a rulemaking here.
It's not
The
89.
engineers are going to discuss rule changes tomorrow. But we can't do it in April. Well, I guess we could potentially.
Page 82.
But rulemaking here?
I lost that page.
Yeah, we want the board to okay the rulemaking notice first, so
They
that
have to, 'cause we have
potentially,
a vote on
okay.
economic impact.
Right, that's right. So you could perhaps vote on the rulemaking hearing notice, best case scenario in April, and maybe have a hearing in June, potentially. That would be the earliest. We'll see how it progresses. And we'll probably think up some more stuff to add to it.
Okay. Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Next is Hal Baltram. He's going to present on page 82 on tracking our PDH.
Yes, sir. The Continuing Education Committee worked on this in session at our fall retreat, and we are hoping that the board will either accept this or make suggestions of edits that would allow for a standardized universal PDH record of accrual for our registrants and licensees. So I open it for comment. And well, I'll say this. One of the objectives was to standardize, to help registrants know specifically, even though there is some standard documentation now, but to include more distinguishing information that then the board office and then the reviewer or the auditor could use to the benefit of the process. Now, I will say there was a comment by one of the committee members that registration number may not be necessary, but the board office had asked that that be put in there. That's why that was left in there. The seal was another thing that was questioned, and I'll raise your consciousness of whether a seal was required for this particular document. And one of the comments back was that, well, if anything, it offers a sense of authenticity from who's sending it. But again, anything is up for discussion. So it's presented for your consideration today.
I understand the need for the registration number because there's probably not more than one Ricky Versailles or Alton Ethco. There may be another Robert Campbell or Steve King.
Not a chance.
Okay, so do we need a motion to adopt this, John? Or
Can I make one comment?
go ahead, go. Yeah.
On the wording professional development hours, since we're going to health, safety, and welfare, do you want to maybe wordsmith that a little bit? Because from our side, a PDH is not the same as a CEU. It's not the same level of quality.
What would you recommend?
Well, this is your all's,
Well, should it be PDH/C,
Well,
continuing education unit?
The way we interpreted a PDH cannot count as health, safety, and welfare because it's more general information.
Okay.
So if you all are going to health, safety, and welfare, you might want to consider calling it CUs or units or however y'all want to. Just
I thought we changed that.
Well, the rules right now call them PDHs. So that's just
At least
PDH is
13 hour and more to be related to
But she raises an
HSW.
interesting point. We probably do need to have space on here where they can indicate
health, safety,
whether it's health, safety, welfare related or not.
Because our law rules right now says it's at least 13 hours.
Sounds good.
So can we put PDH/HS,
W.
HSW in there?
Well, I think you
Well,
probably
they
would
may
need to
have
add
PDH
another line.
or
We'd have
just one line.
PDH in hours and then W, running as another line below it.
I
So
can add that.
Or you could have HSW/TC PDHs, other PDHs.
You just you're suggesting a delineation so the registrant can indicate on this
Right.
form which they're submitting.
That's what was
No problem. We got it. I got it.
This is one event right here.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
Well, like for example, if you go to a conference though, you may have 7 or 8 at that
Session.
same conference. You may go to 7 or 8 sessions.
you don't have 7 or 8 of these sheets.
You'd have 7 or 8, and my point is, if you're the auditor reviewing this, I think it would be confusing to say PDH/HSW. I think if you say the PDHs, and then you have a different line that
That's
says,
what I'm gonna do.
is this
Right.
SW or not?
Right.
Right.
Then it's clear the
That's
number
good.
of hours
Well, here we
and
go.
whether it is.
you have one line PTHs cured, bottom line, second line would be, and you check with a checkbox what it is, whether it's PTH or HSW.
It could be there, or, I mean, down below, you've got this relevance, of course, toward professional development. It could be something down there.
They're all PDHs.
They're all PDHs, yeah.
They're all PDHs, just whether they're
I mean, the question is, does it meet the HSW requirement yet? I mean, and how many of these hours go to the HSW requirement? I mean, that's it. So if you had a seminar that was a 3-day long seminar and you had 20 hours and only 10 of it was HSW, I mean, you either have to fill out 2 forms or you would just
multiple forms.
Or you would just fill out one, have a line on here that said 10 of these 20 hours.
And
were
that's
HSW.
not unusual.
Yeah,
And
that's
that
what I'm saying.
would be- that'd be a
That's-
lot easier.
But you need to quantify that somehow. That's a piece of
Already
cake.
done.
Well,
You're
that's
done.
the relevance of the course is, you know.
So you want to leave the seal on there?
But that's up for the board's discretion. What do you want?
I don't.
You give it your signature.
Yeah.
I think if you put your registration number and your signature, I mean,
It's good enough.
it's just one more thing you gotta go do and stamp.
Leave your name off there, just put your registration number and a forged signature, you got it.
Got it.
So
Let me ask one question.
Yeah, go ahead, Frank.
Some people.
Is this being used when somebody is being audited?
Sorry. Frank.
Yes.
So- Because, well, the one thing you have to do here that I see is, if you're gonna get the presenter's signature and date, you're gonna have to take this to the session and have it signed and dated at the session. Because if it's 2 years later, you're
Well,
gonna have a heck of a time
you
chasing
could
down.
put C attached, and attach the certificate, or whatever they gave.
Oh, that's, yeah.
Because usually, it's always signed by the presenter.
Yeah, sometimes I get a certificate.
And also, if you give this to a lot of the presenters, the standards, ASLA or NCAA or any of the other groups,
DSB.
they can go ahead and sign it and fill out the other information that when they give out, this would be your certificate.
You can go to
Yeah, I guess-
AIA and download your
Right.
continuing education credits and tell them
Correct.
what they are. and attach them.
So,
It's not,
Frank.
Well, this wouldn't be, make sure I understand, this wouldn't be mandatory.
Well, why not? If we all accept it in a final format, why wouldn't we make it the required format? What's the point if we don't? I mean,
I think you probably need a rule change if you want to make it mandatory.
our current format's not part of the law. It just,
Yeah, so the rule specifically references they have to submit a summary log,
right, it's on here,
PDHs, and then supporting documentation.
and it's on here as well.
Yeah.
It doesn't specify the format by which it's to be submitted, only that it's to be submitted.
Well, I mean, it gives them options though for their supporting documentation. It's not just a certificate, it could be receipts. I mean, it gives them several options there.
Receipts and record of attendance, airfare,
Like if you have a
hotel.
transcript, we don't require them to fill out additional forms too.
Right.
Well, instead of, in addition to sponsor signature, I could put in parenthesis under that, or approved
Or other
confirmation,
documentation.
yeah, or other currently approved documentation.
Prescribed documentation.
Yeah, but still though, if they haven't seen an AIA transcript though, they're gonna have to fill out this form for every course listed
No,
on
I
the
don't
transcript
do that.
and say C transcript.
Well, it's like,
But-
I remember going to the AIA National Convention, and you go to a seminar, and they have 1,000 people in it. And, you know, if everybody had to get the guy that presented his signature, you can imagine.
Or you don't have to do that. If you get a log of your attendance, and it's,
And they send that, you know, of course, at that time, that was a barcode type thing.
that's right.
But, you know, they will send you later on and put on your transcript. If that's fine with everybody, that's the way to do it. But
I think the
if
transcript
this
is
was-
acceptable, yes.
Yeah.
But you could,
But I don't have,
one could fill out this form and reference that, whatever that is, your annual meeting, and use the transcript as the signatory requirement.
I think what I think the intent of this process is to help the person who do the review continue with education a little bit.
And the office.
Yeah, and it's kind of, it formalized the process a little bit better. But I think, John, we have not changed actually the nature of evidence in anything.
But they're gonna have to fill this out for every course, that's what I'm hearing, right?
Well, they're already
So
having
they-
to fill out
They're gonna do a
something.
summary log and one of these for every course, and then attach supporting documentation.
And is that only for if you're audited?
Yeah, it would only be for audits, right?
You're not saying that it,
But I mean,
But
still-
you would
still a
probably need
few
to do
hundred
this
years.
as you took it, because if you got audited, you wouldn't be able to, you know, some of this.
unless you had all of this information from, you know,
But I mean, another simple way to look at it is, you can keep it as it is, but when you get audited, the office can send in the audit letter, says that in addition to a summary log, we would like you to fill out this form. That would be a good segue into it.
For each one?
Will this make it harder on the architect?
Well, when you
Yeah.
say
Yeah.
when you say for each one,
Yes, I'm in favor of it.
Wait. When you say for each one, what are we? Let's qualify that. Let's say I go to the AWWA conference, and they do similarly, where they barcode you in, and you get a record of it, a log of your attendance at the end. I would record that as one event, but I may get 20 hours during that one event. So I would turn in this sheet and the attached log referencing my attendance from AWWA, for instance. But I'll tell y'all, if you've done, and it's not a huge deal, but if you've looked at audits, you get such a range of content, of verification. You'll get a certificate with, an hour, and it doesn't tell what it was about or anything, and you're trying to interpret. And I have asked Sandra or someone else to give me more information. I can't tell if this was a basket weaving conference or if it was a technical conference. The objective, and we can change this or not do it at all, I'm not married to it or anything, but the objective was to streamline and simplify, hopefully, the process where we wouldn't have the back and forth and there'd be more clarity on what
How
was
can I
expected.
ask a question? Would this aid in that, at the end of where you said relevance of course toward professional development, put parentheses, attached support documentation?
If it tells what the content, are you interested in the content of the event that they
I
attended
always,
or not?
yeah. I mean,
Okay.
I just
And you've
declined
seen,
somebody.
sometimes you get it and sometimes you don't.
No.
You'll get a certificate of attendance, it'll say this person attended this in this many hours, and it doesn't tell you anything about the content of the conference or whatever they attended.
Well, most of the ones I've reviewed lately are pretty specific about design parameters for seismic
And
zone
if it's on
warning.
there, I would say yes. If it's not specified on your certificate, of your confirmation certificate or whatever we're calling it, then
Well,
they would need to
how's
write it.
this? Let's
Otherwise,
say
they
if-
wouldn't have to write it.
If either staff, when we do the initial review, or you, when you're reviewing them, if you feel that what they submit is not
Insufficient.
sufficient, then we could send them this form and say, you need to fill this
Hold
additional
on.
form out for the courses in question.
Mr. Hondo here on the system. Mr. Hondo.
Hundo.
I understand what you're trying to get, and I agree with, but maybe it's better to do this on the log sheet, because I've been in the same situation as you go through it's not got a good course description. The description that's there doesn't lead you down a path very easy. And maybe on the summary log, John, we need just to incorporate an explanation in that summary log that says how does this course relate to HSW, and have them spell that part of it out and still consolidate the same information. Because I agree with you, there's a lot of times when you read those things and it's a 7-day seminar and they've had 2 hours and it's not real obvious based on the title or any of that they've ever completed their requirements. So, I mean, if we could do that, and if we can make sure that document is an electronic document so that people can go in and keep type that information in and do some of those things, I think that also helps a little bit, because sometimes we get handwritten stuff too that's very difficult to decipher, and you're having to call back and say, please give me more of that. So I'll really work on it.
That's a good idea, and that's probably better. What I was thinking, that when somebody's audited, they could turn in their normal documentation, but this form could be sent to them to say, make sure your documentation includes all of this information. Including it on the log is even better, because they have to do it, but if that's not manageable, you could send them a form to say, make sure all this information is included.
And the rules already require a log, and it says it needs to include a description of the activity, so this could fall under the description.
Does the log have their license number and some of the other things on there.
I think it does have license.
And it has a space for description, but I mean, it's not
Well, what,
big.
yeah, what they end
so
up
we
putting
can
on the
expand
description though is, biopic seminar or something, and, you know, or whatever. I don't even know what biopic is. That's just a word I came up with. But it's just something that they put on there and you're like, well, my God, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Is biopic a word?
It is now.
You're supposed to tell me.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It is. Okay, so I guess how my question to you is, you need the board to give you a motion or?
Chevy Chase.
Well, I mean,
We
it sounds
just
like
only for, just coming from your publication, I mean, continuing education committee recommendation?
it's coming as a recommendation. I've edited it as people have made comments. I have a final version. I can send it to John and it can be used however the staff feels it's appropriate.
Sounds good to me. You okay with that? Good, thank you. John, we need to move on next.
Let's see, next we have publications revisions, and that begins on the next page there, on page 83. And haven't made a lot of progress with this. Ricky just sent some comments on the Consumer's Guide to Susan, and then she forwarded them to me. And Robert has submitted proposed language to amend the Public Works Projects section. That's on page 90 of 166. And that's basically language that was required because of a change to that statute 622107 last year. And he added that a design professional is, let's see, must be involved for public works projects that are greater than $100,000 and located in the state park and are solely maintenance as defined in the policy, or is not solely maintenance as defined in the policy and procedures of the State Building Commission, or site conditions and applicable codes of change for design in the state park that was previously approved by your registrant. So those would be projects involving architecture, engineering, or landscape architecture. Let's see. Of the state, when they must have plans, specs, and estimates prepared. Okay. Okay, I think I'm clear on that. So we just added 2 bullet points to that section. Yeah, I think that was the only change. Now, under qualifications-based selection, that section's highlighted as well. I don't know if we want to make reference to the rule that's in the process of being adopted or not, that registrants can be disciplined for violating that particular statute. It's not essential that that be added.
Adopted,
Right, that'll be in March when that takes effect. But
with nothing to do.
we could revisit that later. And as far as the building officials manual goes, that starts on page 96.
John, can I go back? I had one question.
Yeah.
Under the consumer guide, and it says, when do I need to hire a design professional? And it's got occupancy types requiring a design professional. Is the reason why interior design is not on the list because we don't have a license?
Yeah, because TCA 622102 doesn't reference
apply.
interior designers. Right?
Okay.
It's just a title act. So
Okay.
that's right.
Well, these are the ones that you need a professional on more than anywhere.
Yeah.
You know. So, and I stand corrected. I said residency, occupancy on the statement earlier. It was institutional, not residence.
Okay. In the reference manual, there's we had talked about if we wanted to add a section including the occupancy definitions from the 1985 SBC. That would probably be helpful to building officials because they're frequently asking about that. And also there's several sections that refer to older codes, like still some SBC references.
And I was looking through another document yesterday, and I picked up more references to the SBC. I think it would be prudent on the board's part to revise it to IBC or ICC codes.
Well, just an example, we have like the cover sheet for plan submissions, Appendix E. That's on page 113. I mean, it still has a section, you know, where they can mark SBCCI on there. Yeah. Is anybody really using that code, any of their codes anymore? Edition of the SBC is still listed on there. And then in the general notes section, it still has show area increase calculations per SBC 503.3. There's little references like that. I mean, I'm not a design professional. I'm not a codes expert, so I'm not able to update references of that type. So I would need you guys to work on that type.
See, and just a question: Can we update the reference guide? That it doesn't go before the legislature, does it?
No,
I mean,
no. This is just
more
policy adopted by the
Okay,
board,
so this
basically.
is updating the code references is totally different than updating them in the laws.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it is.
Gotcha.
Yeah, if we could update this and just delete any reference to the SBC.
That's the main thing, and I did add the language that Robert proposed for the consumer's guide in here as well, and the reference manual that's included, I think, in at least one place. But the other main thing is just updating some of the codes references. For that, we would depend on your help.
The only place you may want to leave the SBC reference where it specifically deals with that 5,000 square feet and 3 stories, just so it matches the statute.
And I think
IBC should have the same or similar language.
Well,
it's changed over time.
It's changed. I found out it changed.
I think during the retreat, that's what we were scared about.
Yeah.
That we were making too much assumption that it might have changed over the years. That's why it transpired.
Just that one part, probably.
I think you, like you say, it's probably be good to just reference me.
Yeah.
How many of us architects have that little red book?
Got one here.
That's for the whole state right there. This is our, if you're in the state, we can call John.
If this building catches on fire and we lose this, we're in real trouble.
Scan it in.
Yeah, I need to scan it so we'll have an electronic backup copy. So there, but I think that's all we have to report on publications at this point. That's an ongoing problem.
We still need to wordsmith this a little bit. I've got a couple things in here that are a little not like they need to be. So that's the section Steve and I have to kind of go the public works thing. And I think I had too many sentences going together in a couple of places.
You're both from Knoxville, right?
Yeah, but I'm on north side. He's on the east side. We don't come together.
You meet halfway now. Okay, that's good, John. Anything else from you?
Well, they got the next item there, requiring passage of law and rules exams for all comity applicants. I think this was a Robert Campbell suggestion.
I agree. Man, I agree.
Everybody took their test, right? I sent it out a few months ago, I think. Robert did, and he passed. No, he did better than that, I think.
I think we're at 87. Thank you.
Solid C.
Solid C.
I took it immediately after you and I changed it.
Yeah. Yeah, after we reworded it.
And when I had the cheat sheet, I almost made 100.
Okay.
Now, from a staff perspective, I oppose this suggestion.
Why? Because too much work?
It's a whole lot of extra work.
Another requirement. Well, if you think about it philosophically, we're trying to make it easier, not harder for people to come here and work. I can understand when it's important for them to know our law and rules, but adding another requirement, I don't know if you really want to do that, unless you have a real rational basis for it.
And you look at the number of complaints we have versus our total registered population, it's a pretty small percentage. I mean, we know, of course, there's more infractions.
Well, you know,
out there than
you
we
do know every time when you sign a renewal form, says you have read the book, right?
And on
I
that,
do
they
read
have
them
to read
from cover to cover, front page and the back page.
Maybe the first time you did it, but not every day.
No, I'm okay with it, but I will tell you that my passion about requiring any of the registrants that really want to come to our work at least need to understand our law and rules here. And if you are the offending members, registrant, I think that we can do that. But if you think comity becomes a administrative issue, I'm flexible with that. So that's the reason I'm speaking up, because I'm the only one on there. I always talk about law and rules exam. So
I think it's a fair enough thing that if somebody violates a law or a rule, to ask them to take it, pass it. As another thing, as an architect licensed in all over the country, it's just one more thing you got to do. It's just,
Yeah, I think it would be labeled by NCARB at least as an impediment to reciprocity. They're big on impediments.
that's why I'm okay with it. Okay. Sounds like I got here all this nodding around, but there's no action to be taken, right?
No.
Yeah. Next, I want to go on to the next new business. Rick, you got the nomination committee?
If you'll tap off your screen and go to your library and open up that other document, just to.
What page?
It's page number 6.
Second document.
Second
It's on
document.
your library. It's the yellow page.
Thank you, sir.
If you'll go to page 6 of 134.
It's canary colored for you, but the rest of it's yellow.
Page 6 of 134, section part 4. Just to remind everyone what we came up with in terms of how we would select board officers and for new members.
But
What page number?
It's page 6 of 134. It's actually page 3.
It's a new document.
The bylaws. The bylaws.
Okay.
And it's part 4. Part 4. Board officers and their duties, and it outlines what the board officers are, the chair, the vice chair, and the secretary, and what those requirements are for each one of those. And then the election of the board officers, what the qualifications are, how we're trying to rotate the chair for discipline through the discipline, and the nomination and election procedures. This meeting is to just make everyone aware of that we are calling for officer nominations. Previously, we rotated through the disciplines, whereas Philip is an engineer, he's chairman this year, Bill was vice chair, and I was secretary. And then if we just rotate those like we have in the past, or the 4 will be open for nominations at the next meeting. So that's for those of you who are new board members and don't remember this, that's your reading
So
assignment.
we would need to make a recommendation for the secretary that would then rotate
correct.
into the next position.
So secretary.
That would be correct.
Yes,
And that should be an engineer or?
It would be.
You become an engineer in town.
Because it's either AEO or EAO or whatever.
It's AU.
EIEIO.
They all pay the same, a lot of money anyway. So you're
Yeah.
Anything else from you, Rick?
No, I just wanted everybody to just get reacquainted with that, and then we'll make nominations in April and vote them on those in June, and nominations from the floor can be done at that time.
And also just kind of side note, in standing committee, if you look at the standing committee page that you have, if there's some places you feel like you need to be in there, unfortunately Susan is in pretty much every one of them. So.
Well, that's what you do with the new kids, you put them on all the committees.
And actually, you think about it, the public members can be in every committee too. So.
I'm on committees.
No, are you gonna? No, we're asking the engineering committee. You want to stay overnight with us so we can have a meeting with us?
Heading back to Maryville.
Thank you. That's great. Yeah, go ahead, sir.
I just want to say, Rick, good to have you back.
Thank you. Good to be back.
Good to have you too.
We with any luck, I may get reappointed. I don't know. We'll see. In June.
I was talking about back from your.
Oh, back from my surgery.
Your surgery.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back from that.
Okay, I think the next one, John, I just lost my page. Not like it.
Well, we have the requirement for construction administration. You already talked about that. I don't
Yeah.
know that we need to.
I don't think we need to go do
We
that.
need to do that anymore, do we? So, report on the NCEES Board President's Assembly is next on there. I don't think we need to go into a whole lot of detail. We'll talk about that maybe tomorrow.
Yeah, I will give the engineering committee a full report, and after that, you and I can type the notes out.
Yeah. But just suffice it to say, the main discussion was about computer-based testing.
Yes,
So that
and
was
then
the
the
goal.
question about industrial exemption, they use the word evolution versus revolution, something like that, so.
Yeah. And they talked about how quite a bit.
Yeah, I have a lot of people, I let the record shows, my feelings will be hurt. A lot of people come up to me and they say, "You from Tennessee? Do you know how?" I said, "What about me?"
Yeah.
There were a lot
That
of
leaves
people
an
there.
impression on people.
I won't tell you.
Oh, are you ready for the last item?
Yeah, last item, conflict of interest.
Conflict of interest statement. I think somebody needs to read this into the record. No, I'm just kidding. We did it one year, the chair did do that.
Yeah, we did.
That's
Is
a
it the
little-
same as it was before?
I don't think any changes have been made, but I haven't done a word for word comparison. I guess we'll just pass these down. No, you just sign them. You just sign.
We can give back to
the date. Yeah, let's just pass them on. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, let's, good idea.
When the code sent me all the info.
Complete.
Better read it close.
Read it first. They may have
Has
snuck
it
something
changed
really
since
weird.
last year? Has it
Not that I
changed?
know of.
But you're not sure.
Yeah, I haven't done a word for word comparison. Usually they don't change it. We're done.
Okay, John, you want to collect it?
Who is
Yes.
the ethics, who's the ethics compliance officer, do we know, of the Department of Commerce?
That's the general counsel. Who is that now? Nancy Jones. Okay.
Can we ask you guys?
What's her favorite food or?
I know it's not Chinese.
Oh.
Signing our life away.
Yep.
When I said I do, I didn't realize it. Okay, if we have done that, I do hear a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved to adjourn.
Second, all in favor, say aye. Meeting was adjourned at 4:51. I need to talk to the engineering committee for about 30 seconds, see whether you want to meet. John, are we allowed to come early?